Hello, my name is Alex Gibson, and welcome to the Halloween episode of Movie Changeup, where every week two people go head-to-head pitching reboots to movies we all love and all love to hate, but with a little added twist, because every week there's also a new rule that they must follow. One rule per movie, and you can't use a rule more than once. Now, to help me determine the winner today in our head-to-head matchup, I have an assistant judge who you should all recognize by now, though he may look a little different today. Tristan, why don't you introduce yourself? And since this is the Halloween episode, tell us who you're wearing.
Well, it is the Halloween episode. I'm back again I just finally got my first win a couple weeks ago, and I'm still riding that high. You know, I had a horror-themed episode a little before that, and I barely lost that one. I think I'm excited to watch this now and get some horror movies. I do love horror movies, and I kind of tried to theme my costume around that a little bit. If you couldn't tell from my mask, I am Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. I have the brown pants on that you can't see either, but I swear I bought this costume as I was driving here today, so I'm really happy about it.
Awesome. It looks good. And for those watching, I am dressed as Burt Macklin because I am bringing law and order to this podcast. So our competitors today, we have the two OGs of the show. They're ready to fight to the death or until somebody gets to 4 points. Competitors, please introduce yourselves and let the listeners know what costume you're wearing. Let's start with Joe.
Well, guys, I got some bad news. I've been infected by corona. It's been a long day. Can't breathe. And I've been just pounding beers. So, it is what it is. But I'm feeling pretty good. The only thing that's got me nervous is Johnny's repeater rule. Basically, he whooped my ass last time. And so now he can use one of the 7 rules twice and throw out a rule he doesn't like, and so I'm pretty nervous about that.
I'm interested to see how Johnny utilizes that. Johnny, how are you feeling today, and who are you wearing?
Put the bunny back in the box. My name's Cameron Poe. I came here with a mission today to destroy Joe, even though I'm a God-fearing, loving man. I gotta get revenge. Yeah, I'm not going to do that the whole episode because that'd be real tough. But, yeah, I'm Cameron Poe from Con Air, Nicolas Cage classic. I can probably do a Southern accent just about as good as he can, which is not saying much. But I'm ready to defeat Joe again and pop my record up to, 6-1, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got quite the dynasty going on right now, Johnny.
I'm trying to. I figured the only way I could improve it is by wearing a mullet today. So I just had to find a character with a mullet. Really all I did. Bought a mullet and a bunny, and that's really all I needed.
It works. Before we start, if you're listening to this through a podcast app, please go to YouTube and find the episode of Movie Changeup. Give us a thumbs up, a comment, and subscribe to our channel. If you're already watching us on YouTube, go to your favorite podcast app and download this episode to give us a rating and a review. If you think we gave you a 5-star podcast, give us a 5-star review. If you think we gave you anything less, don't be a dick. Just let us know what we could do better and still give us 5 stars. If you're watching live, feel free to comment. And if the comment is good, we'll put it on the screen and we'll respond during the stream. So today we have 7 movies and 7 rules. I am going to go ahead and list the movies that we have, and then I'll let Tristan read off the rules to you. So the 7 movies we have: A Nightmare on Elm Street, Ghostbusters, Nosferatu, The Purge, Hocus Pocus, The Crow, and The Addams Family. And then Tristan, if you'd like to enlighten everybody on the rules that we have to go off of.
Is he muted for anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah, can't hear you.
That would help. All right. Let's see what the rules are. It's an interesting lineup of movies, so we'll see how they apply these to that. The first is that one must be a whodunit. The second is that one must include Chuck Norris. One must be set in the MCU. One must be directed by and star 4 of the nominees from the different categories of the 91st Academy Awards. One must be a Frat Pack movie. One must be cast as a 1970s movie. And one must use the entire cast of another movie on the list. And like we heard earlier, Johnny has a repeater rule, so he might repeat one of the rules in there and kick out one of the bad ones. Will be interesting to see which ones he goes with if he does.
Absolutely. I'm interested to see how he plays that. We had a coin toss before this podcast stream started today. So we already know that I believe Johnny will be going first. Johnny, you get to choose the first film that we'll be doing. And what do you want to go with?
Let's see. This is tough because there's a couple I feel confident with. I try to find my most middle-ish one, but I think Joe and I are pretty passionate about both. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to tilting Hocus Pocus, and I'm going to go second.
Hocus Pocus. All right. Hocus Pocus is a 1993 film directed by Kenny Ortega. It has a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. Honestly, a little bit high for me. I believe it's the most overrated like Halloween movie there really is out there.
Hot take.
And IMDb describes the movie as a curious youngster moves to Salem, where he struggles to fit in before awakening a trio of diabolical witches that were executed in the 17th century. So let's hear the pitches, guys.
All right, I'm going first, right?
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to start off. The rule I use is I made this a Frat Pack movie. If you don't know who the Frat Pack are, that's like your Ben Stiller, Jack Black, Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, those type of guys. So my main three guys are Max, Eli, and Jay, played by Jack Black, Vince Vaughn, and Owen Wilson. And they also have three kids in the movie. Max's son, David, or Jack Black's character's son, David, is going to be played by Brady Noon, who played Thor in Good Boys. Eli, Vince Vaughn's character, his son is Alex, played by Noah Jupe from Honey Boy. And then Jay, Owen Wilson's character, his daughter, Danny, is going to be played by Elsie Fisher from 8th grade. And the three Sanderson sister witches, in the original version, there was kind of Winifred, played by Bette Midler, was the leader. In my version, they're kind of all equal. So my Winifred is going to be Christina Applegate from Married with Children and Anchorman. My Sarah is going to be played by Juliette Lewis from Natural Born Killers, Starsky and Hutch, and Old School. And my Mary is going to be played by Katherine Hahn from Parks and Rec, Step Brothers, and Anchorman. My Billy Butcher is going to be played as a cameo by Ben Stiller. I don't know if I said this, but Ben Stiller is my director. And then my Thackeray Binks is going to be played by Jay Baruchel from Tropic Thunder and Goon. So for my plot, in the late 1600s, Thackeray Binks' daughter Emily is drawn to the Sanderson sisters' house. Thackeray watches as his daughter's youth is stolen from her by a spell cast by the three witch sisters, and she dies. The witches turn Thackeray into a cat, cursing him to live forever with the guilt of not being able to save her. The witches are hanged by the townspeople, but the oldest sister, Winifred, casts a spell before she dies, and if anyone lights the black candle in their house on Halloween, the sisters will be reborn. In present day, Max, Eli, and Jay, which is Jack Black, Vince Vaughn, and Owen Wilson, who are best friends since childhood, are partying on Halloween and celebrating that for the first Halloween in years, they don't have to take their kids trick-or-treating because they're all too old. After a few drinks, Eli, played by Vince Vaughn, decides to dare the others to visit the old Sanderson sisters' house, which has been turned into a historical site. The others are scared, but he says it's just a scary story parents tell their kids. The three make their way to the house and step inside. They look at the cauldron in the spell book, but it's too dark and they can't see, so Jack Black's character lights the black candle. The sisters are reborn and awoken. The recently divorced Eli tries hitting on them, but they are not amused. Using magic, they tie the men up and go out looking for the youth in the town. The men realize what happened and the legends are true. The men get free and leave, but not before grabbing the spell book. The plot of the movie is the three men having to convince their kids of the danger of the sisters and teaming up with their kids to take the sisters down. The dads learn to reconnect with their kids and start to see them as young adults and not just kids. The six of them meet Billy and Thackeray along the way. Thackeray helps them save their kids and do what he couldn't. There are scenes of the sisters crashing a karaoke party, singing a version of I Put a Spell on You, and getting a bunch of teenagers to follow them back to their house. There's a scene where the sisters think they found the devil, but it is just a guy and his wife dressed as the devil and angel, played by Judd Apatow and Leslie Mann, as an homage to the scene from the original with Gary and Penny Marshall. The sisters are taken out when Jay, played by Owen Wilson, is looking at the spell book, and he sees they can only come back until sunrise if they don't steal any youth. The three men distract the sisters until sunrise, killing them. Billy goes back to his coffin, and Thackeray is released from his cat form to join his daughter in the afterlife. Most of the comedy comes from Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, and Jack Black reacting to the witches and characters like Thackeray and Billy. And that is my pitch.
All
All
right.
right, good. Johnny?
All right. We went totally different directions because I'm in agreement with Alex. I'm not a big Hocus Pocus guy. I was when I was a kid. I watched it, but really the movie doesn't hold up. It's not very good. So we're changing the storyline a little bit because I think the only thing you really need for Hocus Pocus is 3 salty witches. So first, I'll just go into my plot. So my rule, I'm making mine a Whodunnit movie. And this is my pitch. When there is a murder during a Halloween dinner party attended by Dracula, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, Frankenstein's monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon, which is all hosted by Dr. Jekyll, they must call in the 3 witches they have not invited to the party to help solve the murder of Dr. Jekyll's butler. So my 3 witches, the Sanderson sisters, are Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Kristen Schaal. My Dracula is Bill Hader. My Frankenstein is Jason Segel. My Wolfman is Jay Farrow. My Invisible Man is Jeff Goldblum. My Dr. Jekyll is Jason Bateman. And then my creature from the Black Lagoon, I'm just going to throw in like Doug Jones because it's not a movie by whatchamacallit, Guillermo del Toro, but Doug Jones can still play a funny, creepy monster. And my director is Nicholas Stoller, who did Neighbors and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, as well as produced the Muppet movies and directed like Storks. So he has good experience doing like lighthearted comedies as well as R-rated comedies. So I like that blend. Mine's going to be more of a PG-13 comedy whodunit with, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Kristen Schaal being upset that they weren't invited to the party. So then they come in and then they got to figure out, who killed the butler, which one of these monsters did it. So that's my movie.
All right, good. Thank you both. I think I have one question for each of you initially, and then we'll see what Tristan's got, and then let you guys battle it out. We'll go with Johnny first. I guess my question would be centered around what makes the witches the reason, like why would they come to solve?
So what we're going to have is everyone finds the dead body and they all start blaming each other because they're all, these monsters. So they all think the other person did it. And Dr. Jekyll decides the only way to really figure out how to do this is invite the witches because they can use their magic to, figure out who the dead guy is. This is like in an old castle. There's no police. There's no like detective to call. So the only way they feel like they can really get someone to figure out how this person was killed was get some magic involved. So that's why they call him.
Gotcha. Okay. And then Joe, in yours, you had mentioned where the humor was coming from, but where do you see this movie fitting? Is it PG, PG-13, R?
It's a harder PG-13.
Okay. Gotcha. Tristan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I had a similar question for Joe. I got the idea of who his characters were and that kind of thing, and I just wanted to get more of a clear idea of what the movie would be like. But what would an example of a scene be like? What is the interactions like? What are you trying to aim for with the comedy here?
I mean, yeah, like typical scene. Like I said, there's a scene where there's like early in the movie, they're sitting around having a few beers, but they're kind of bored, and they decide, in Vince Vaughn's character, like his type of characters would, dare the others, like, hey, let's go visit the Sanderson sister house, and they go and they walk over, and then they unleash the sisters by lighting the candle, and immediately Vince Vaughn doesn't really realize they're the Sanderson sisters at first. He thinks they're just like a couple of women who wandered in as well, and he tries hitting on them and it doesn't work out. And then like you have the scenes with the kids where at first they try to be like more parental to the kids because they still see them as little kids and not young adults, but as the movie moves on, they see them more as like, hey, these are young adults, they can figure things out on their own, they don't necessarily need us, they're not 100% dependent on us anymore. And so originally it's kind of like they start off celebrating the fact that their kids are older and not getting not trick-or-treating anymore. But at the end, they're almost like sad a little bit that their like kids are starting to grow up and they're not the same little kids they were at the beginning.
I see
but
that.
You also have the comedic scenes, like when they run into Billy Butcherson for the first time and he's a zombie. Like obviously Jack Black's going to react like he would, and he just starts running and screaming. When they notice Thackeray Banks, the talking cat, for the first time, they're all like freaking and tripping out, thinking they've like gone crazy.
I see that. My question for Johnny, you did say the Hocus Pocus is not a great movie. I do kind of agree with you, but I think it's a classic movie. So can you explain a little bit about your rationale to change the plot up so much?
I feel like the main thing from Hocus Pocus that you need to keep are the three witches, the Sanderson sisters. And you need to have them kind of be the antagonists in a way, but in mine it's going to flip it a bit, because at first they're going to be plotting on how to ruin the dinner party, and they're going to be very upset, like just like all the dialogue, like in the original one with the three witches of, why aren't we invited? We're never, thought of as like these classic monsters. And then like the dinner party dialogue is talking shit about all the witches. And then when they bring them in, they got to decide to help them to kind of get accepted into the group, or go through with their plan of just like ruining the whole party and doing it. And I think that's a good little twist on it. And it will still center around the three witches, which will be the most memorable characters. Because that's really all you need to know about the original Hocus Pocus. Like the thing with the cat and the zombie and all that is just like forgettable nonsense. And the three witches, like Bette Midler, that's what made the movie. So I wanted to focus on that and take the other stuff out.
Yeah, I definitely like that take. All right, I'm interested to hear you guys argue it out if you got nothing else to say.
All right, yeah, my main thing, Alex, did you have something or?
Nope. Yeah, go ahead and fight
All
it
right,
out.
yeah, my main thing against Johnny is he took side characters from the first one, or like the original, which are obviously a big part of the movie, completely changed what they are, put them in a completely different storyline, a completely different movie, and then said this is a reboot of Hocus Pocus. The witches in the original Hocus Pocus were literally killing kids, sucking the youth out of kids to make them like to keep themselves younger. And in his movie, they're just like at a dinner party and mad they didn't get invited to a dinner party. Like they were evil in the first one, and his they're just kind of like goofy. And mine is still a comedy like the first one is, but my witches are still evil, and my plot line still generally follows kind of the plot line with the first one and has more characters that people love, like Thackeray and Billy. No one really cares about Max or any of the other characters, so that's why I felt more confident in changing those characters. His movie doesn't have Thackeray. His movie doesn't have Billy Butcherson, other famous characters from that movie.
Here's my thing, though. None of those characters are actually famous characters. You only know those characters because you looked up the movie for your pitch. Like, I've seen this movie probably 20 times when I was a kid. The only characters I remember or care about are the witches. I know they're evil in the movie, but they're the memorable ones. All the plot is terrible, so get rid of that. You can still call it Hocus Pocus by having the Sanderson sisters, and it's witches. Like Hocus Pocus is a pretty generic title for, a witchcraft movie. So that's really all you need to connect it to the title. It's not like I'm making a whole new movie that doesn't connect to it in any way. And then my other thing with it is, the original one, yeah, it was like a Disney type movie for kids. And then they had witches like murdering children and stuff like that. So mine is going to be more of like a PG-13 on the edge of that. And it's still going to be for, young teenagers and kids with their parents, rather than what you said, more of like a hard R-ish.
No, I said a hard PG-13, like a more of a
hard PG-13. So mine's going to be like soft PG-13, which I think is a better tone for like a Hocus Pocus reboot. No one is asking for, there are some kids movies that it's like, oh, that'd be cool if like the movie I grew up with, they did like a harder reboot of it. No one's asking for that for yours. I think the fun characters are really all you need, and this is something we haven't really had. And pretty much
you would bring back all of the fun characters,
different than any of the plot.
Just because you don't remember Thackeray Binks and Billy Butcherson doesn't mean that people that don't like that movie and want to watch that movie don't like those characters. You brought what's his face, Doug Jones, who played Billy Butcherson back in the original, to play this creature from the Black Lagoon in yours, and fans of the original are going to be upset that he's not back as Billy.
Yeah, all those big fans of the original, like
because there's not
like telling how popular this movie is. It's
Hocus Pocus is like the main feature point. Like when they do commercials on Freeform for the 31 Days of Halloween, Hocus Pocus is front and center. It's not like some back movie that's like, oh, this is on Thursday. Like Freeform, Hocus Pocus is basically on 24/7.
Okay, so here's my thing. Okay, so it's a memorable movie. All right. So the best thing to do with a memorable movie is change it as much as you can with leaving some aspects the same. Because if you're rebooting something that's so memorable, if you're saying it's so memorable, why would you have the same plot line? Why would you have anything to really connect it to the original? Because then it's just pointless. And yours, to me, like, Ben Stiller is a good director on occasion, but if you're trying to go for more harder PG-13, that's like his shitty movies like Walter Mitty. Like if I'm having Ben Stiller as my director, he needs to have like a Zoolander where it's outrageous front characters, or Tropic Thunder. Those are the only movies he's directed that are really good. And you're throwing him into yours, which doesn't fit his directing abilities. It doesn't fit the people. Like this just sounds like another movie. Vince Vaughn is just going to be like the least likable person because he just clearly doesn't care. Your movie sounds like The Watch. Like I don't need to see that again. You know, that's literally the same tone, pretty much the same actors. It's just them not caring. Like I don't need to see any of that. I want to see, if I'm going to see Hocus Pocus, I want something completely different than what I saw. You know, and this is a fun movie. Nothing like this has been done. It's the closest, you know, resemblance to this would probably be the movie with all the classic monsters. That was fun, but that's really all we're going with mine. You have a bunch of classic monsters, you have good actors in it, and you have a fun movie for all ages.
Yes.
Joe, do you have any final rebuttals?
Yeah, my whole thing is he says mine his has interesting character, or mine doesn't have interesting characters. Or he said that Ben Stiller is best when he has outlandish characters. Well, he has 3 crazy witches to work with. He has a zombie to work with, and he also has a talking cat to work with, which I feel like are more outlandish and crazy characters than anything in Tropic Thunder or anything in any of his other movies. And my main thing against Johnny is he basically made a completely different movie that has nothing to do with Hocus Pocus. You could literally, if you watch that movie and they called the Sanderson sisters in his movie literally anything else, people would not even connect that to, oh, are these supposed to be the Sanderson sisters? Or like they wouldn't even remind them of the Sanderson sisters in the original Hocus Pocus. He just wrote a different movie and then called it Hocus Pocus.
With the same characters and the same title. So
all right, I think I know where I'm leaning. Tristan, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards Johnny on this one. I think his just sounds like a more interesting take on the characters. I think it would have been like perfect if he brought back the same actresses. Because I think knowing there's a big fandom for Hocus Pocus still, like it was a #1 movie of the U.S. box office last weekend, and I think people would be excited to see these actresses back as these characters, even if it was in like a totally different tone, a totally different movie. But I do think that's the direction that people would want to see it, just something different rather than just sort of a lesser remake of the original. And I think Joe's just kind of feels like he took okay actors and put them in like a okay at best movie and gave them like a kind of remake of Hocus Pocus, and I just don't think it would have been a very good movie compared to Johnny's.
All right. I think I have my decision as well. So I think that both I was on the fence at first, and I've actually gone back and forth a few times because I can see the merit on both sides. I see that Johnny may have changed his a little too much, but then Joe's feels a little bit too much like the same. And as Johnny had mentioned, if this is such a cult classic, is that really a movie that you make the same, or do you kind of almost completely change it? I know that for Joe, this wasn't a rule choice, so I mean it's kind of irrelevant. But I feel like the movie you pitched, if that was the cast of Grown Ups, I would 100% be behind it. I feel like that's their type of movie. I really liked what Johnny was doing with having Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, and Kristen Wiig as his witches. And I like the idea of kind of completely changing it. So for me, I decided to go with Johnny on this one. I think it was interesting to see you guys both go with completely different kind of takes on it. But yeah, so Johnny is going to start up 1-0.
That was my movie I changed like 2 hours ago. I was just like, well, no, I don't like my pitch. I'm going to make it completely different. So
we do have a couple of live comments. First is from Jordan. I hope Burt Macklin loses. Can't happen. Burt always gets his man. And then Spinner 58 seems to side with Joe. Johnny's has nothing to do with the original. The witches could be from anywhere. They could be from Macbeth.
Except they're not, because they're called the Sanderson sisters, and it's called Hocus Pocus. Bingo bango. We're not changing titles here like I think it was Mason doing.
No, it was Darren who like completely
Darren.
the
That's
title
what
and the plot. And
Darren was like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this movie The Town, and then make it completely, it had nothing to do with it.
And he is.
Yeah, so we're going to go with
All
that.
right,
So what do you got next?
We're going with The Crow next.
Crow, all right.
And I'll go first this time as well.
Perfect. The Crow is a 1994 film directed by, I'm going to butcher this last name, Alex Proyas. Has an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the description on IMDb is a man brutally murdered comes back to life as an undead avenger of his and his fiance's murder. And for those who may not be aware, but are like, I feel like I know of this movie. This is the movie that Brandon Lee died during the shooting of, the filming of. So, Joe?
All right, you'll probably see why I picked this movie when I finish my pitch. I feel one of the main failures of the Crow reboots is they all try to copy the original comic, which was very much of its time. However, the original comic has a bunch of prequels and spin-offs with many people who become the Crow from many different time periods. It'd be like if they kept trying to reboot Batman, but only focused on one comic book run instead of the thousands of Batman comic book runs. So that is what I did. I took the bare bones story of the Crow and set it in a different time period. My version of The Crow is directed by Dee Reese, who directed the Netflix movie Mudbound a few years ago, and it opens with a quote from the original. People once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead, but sometimes something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it and the soul can't rest. And sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring the soul back to put the wrong things right. So, it's 1875. The town of Lincoln, Texas, which was settled by former slaves, is being terrorized by neighborhood white men in hoods. On October 30th, 1875, Renata Davis, played by Letitia Wright from Black Panther, and her husband Eric are the only two to stand up to them. They are hanged. On the 1-year anniversary of Renata's death, a crow lands on her headstone, caws at the night sky, and flies away. The dirt under her headstone moves, and Renata claws her way out. We see Renata stroll into a newly built bar patronized by a bunch of dirty, greasy white guys. They tell her she can't be in there. She asks why, and they say because of the color of her skin. She spots a bucket of white paint, dips her hand in, and wipes it on her face. She removes the paint around her lips and eyes, making it look like a makeshift clown makeup. She then asks, "Is that better?" One of the patrons shoots her. It bleeds a little, but quickly heals. More of them shoot at her as she walks towards them. The bullets slow her down, but don't stop her. They're calling her the devil and run in fear. She says, "You got blood all over my dress," to a now empty bar, except for the bartender, which is where my rule comes in, because the bartender is played by Chuck Norris. She takes one of their long black trench coats hanging off the back of a chair. She takes another's black cowboy hat sitting on a table. Before walking out of the bar, she grabs a pair of 6-shooters and waist holders. From there, it turns into a combination of a horror western revenge film as she hunts down and kills the men responsible for her and her husband's death. The main villain will be played by Boyd Holbrook from Logan, with others filling out the cast of the racist KKK members. And that's my pitch.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Some things to say about that. But Joe, I'll tell you this. We matched on the same rule here because my movie will also have Chuck Norris in it. Give you an idea. So my director is Chad Stahelski, who did the John Wick movie. My Eric Draven / The Crow is Sacha Dhawan, who is he's been in a bunch, but most famous probably for being Steel Serpent and Iron Fist and being the guy they just should have cast as Iron Fist in that show. My kind of gang leader is Chuck Norris, and my Sarah is Elisa Vikander. That's the girlfriend. So my pitch, it's close to the original. Joe and I have different ideas on what needs to happen to the Crow. So this will be another interesting one. My pitch, Eric Draven and his fiancée are on a walk after a date in downtown Detroit. It is Devil's Night, the night before Halloween. The two are approached by a gang of men. Eric offers the men money to leave, but they refuse. The gang attacks them, killing them both and throwing Eric off a bridge. His body floats down the river. 1 year later, a crow lands on the grave of Eric Draven. His arm reaches up through the dirt. He is awakened. Now, donning the attire of the Crow, he investigates who is involved in the killing of his fiancée Sarah and himself. Through brutal methods, he discovers the man in charge of the gang that caused his death. The gang leader requires new members to take the lives of 2 people for initiation. The Crow breaks through the front door of the warehouse, used as the gang's hideout, and fights through waves and waves of gang members to get to the leader of the gang responsible for the horrific events from 1 year ago. Draven is surprised to find the leader of the gang is an old man and angry that someone who seems so weak is able to control so many people. But just then he's attacked by the gang leader's main, I guess, henchman, and that's going to be played by Iko Uwais. So the main fight of the movie, not having Chuck Norris, 80-year-old man, have a big fight scene. We're having Iko Uwais from the Raid movies have an epic fight scene at the end before the Crow murders them both, and then it's returned to the afterlife. So that is my movie.
Okay, I am interested. You guys both had Chuck Norris as your rule. Joe, am I correct in assuming that Chuck Norris is almost just a cameo in yours, or is he a little?
He's like kind of like a mentor for maybe like the first act, and then he's kind of gone throughout the movie.
Okay.
He like helped her because he knows the town, and that's basically it. And then
gotcha. Okay. And then Johnny, on your other end, he seems to be kind of the villain in this. How involved is he throughout the whole movie, or is he just kind of? Is he just kind of on the outside?
He's on the outside, and the whole movie you don't know who the villain is until the end when he comes in. He expects this big fight, and it's like, you know, old Chuck Norris, and they have dialogue together, and that's when he learns the plot of like the gang and why he was killed, and really how meaningless his death was. It was just, you know, so he could initiate these new, you know, people into his gang. And then they have the big fight scene with Iko Uwais. So he basically, Joe has him kind of in the first act. Mine would, I guess, be like the third act. So he's probably in the movies about the same, but just one's at the beginning, one's at the end.
Gotcha. Okay. Tristan, thoughts?
Yeah, it's really interesting when they use the same rule on the same movie, but we definitely got two different pitches here, and I think especially they included Chuck Norris differently. So I'm liking Johnny's use of Chuck Norris. I think it's interesting if Chuck Norris has had a comeback that he would be like the reoccurring character, then be the villain. That kind of be fun. But I do think Joe's is kind of more realistic. So I think if Chuck Norris was going to do a movie like this, it'd probably just be like, oh yeah, give me the paycheck, and then I'll do the bartender scenes, and then I'll go home. But yeah, I'm torn on these two. It'll be interesting to see them argue out their two different versions of a Chuck Norris movie.
All right, let's hear you guys fight it out.
All right, I'll start because Joe started last time. But I think the thing with even just having Chuck Norris in it, I mean, he's got the director of Mudbound, Dee Reese, who I think is an up-and-comer who's going to have some really great movies upcoming, and then pretty bigger stars. I mean, Letitia Wright is a big star in her own right. I mean, she's going to be even a bigger star now in the Black Panther series. So I think realistically, if we're going for realistic in terms of what role is more like what Chuck Norris would be in, the movie that's kind of just a fun action movie that's directed by the guy from John Wick, I feel like that he would throw in, you know, an older actor and give him a shot at it. I don't think Chuck Norris, I mean, he's just the bartender, so you know, I'm not going to hit you too hard on that, but I think just role-wise and casting-wise, I think my movie makes more sense for it. Even if you look at some of the casting in the John Wick movies, like I wouldn't be surprised in the next John Wick if Chuck Norris was just thrown in there. So that's kind of why I wanted to do that. And then you have the fake out of you think Chuck Norris is going to have this fight scene as an 80-year-old man, and then, you know, the Crow's attacked by like the younger, stronger guy.
Yeah, I mean, my main thing against yours is yours just sounds like every version of The Crow that either was like a direct-to-video terrible movie, or every version of The Crow they tried to get off the ground and just like never even got made. They just always copy like the Eric Draven storyline over and over and over again. I've seen it. Like yours might have cool martial arts fights, but like other than that, I don't know like why this would be any better or different than every other shitty version of The Crow besides the first one.
Because my thing with it is this. I think the problem that they made all these years with The Crow is they did try to keep it so similar to the original, but they didn't change anything else. They didn't really change the tone. They didn't change the rating. They didn't change the action in it. It was just kind of more and more of the same. And mine, I don't think you need to change the plot of The Crow. The Crow plot is awesome. It's a very cool story of revenge. It's a supernatural superhero. It's very different than any of the Marvel heroes or DC heroes that we've gotten movies for. I like the origin of The Crow. I don't think you need to really change it as much as you did. But I think the thing that really could make a kick-ass Crow movie is you give it a good director for martial arts and stunts, and you have more hand-to-hand combat, and you have more, like the whole basically half a second, third act, and into the third act of my movie is just going to be him fighting like waves of villains in a warehouse. You don't need as much other story in it. You have his origin. You have it more of a he does a quick investigation. He kind of tortures some gang members to find out where the hideout is and find out why this death happened. And then he goes to the warehouse, has epic fight scenes, and it's like the good fight scenes in John Wick. I mean, that's really all you need to make a cool Crow movie, and that's what they've been missing from all these reboots and the straight to DVDs, because if you watch those, they haven't cast anyone who can do the action like Brandon Lee could. And even in that movie, the story's the best part. The action in that movie doesn't really hold up. They could have done a lot more. So I want to do basically the plot of the original one, keep it very similar, make it a little darker, have it a hard R, and then give it some more violence and more fight scenes that were missing from the original that I wish we could have gotten.
Yeah, I just don't understand. I just still don't see how yours is. Like, it's going to be a shitty movie like all the other Crows.
Yeah, like all the John Wick
fight scenes.
Those are so shitty. You put a good director with good martial arts people in it.
Well, yeah, I put a good director with my movie, and you said you need to change, like, what they should do is change the tone and the setting, and I did that as well.
Like, I didn't shit on your director. I just think your director is maybe over, like, I think this movie is below your director. Your director.
No one knows who my director is. Your director, as far as popularity right now, is in the top 10.
I mean, yeah, but
working director. So how can you say my movie is below? My movie hasn't even had a theatrically released popular movie. Your director is in charge of the John Wick franchise, so I don't know how you could say my movie is below my director. This could be the type of movie
because your director wants to make important films, and you just kind of shoehorned like fake importance into The Crow. Like, The Crow has nothing to do with these things, and it has never had anything to do with these things.
Crow has had there's been versions of The Crow where it was a person that survived the Holocaust going back and killing the guards at the concentration camp they were in. There's been multiple versions of The Crow. Eric Raven is just like one of like 40 characters that have been The Crow.
Yeah, but the popular version of The Crow is one thing. If you go on Google and you look up The Crow, yeah, you'll find all the versions, but it's like making, like the 10th most popular version of a superhero. So I think with yours, I'm sick of seeing movies about race that are set in the 1800s. If you're going to make movies about race, set them in current day and show how this stuff's still going on. So I don't need to see that. And I don't need to see race and issues like that thrown into the Crow movie because, yeah, maybe there was a comic about that, but then make it about the Holocaust and do something we haven't seen. Yours doesn't sound very cool. Yours sounds like a lamer version of Django. And even though I like your cast, like I just don't need to see your movie. It doesn't feel like The Crow. Your movie, like we talked about how it doesn't feel like it. You just have the makeup on, but it does feel like I would go see your movie if it was called literally anything besides The Crow, and it didn't have anything to do with it, and it was just like a, by the director of Mudbound, and it was basically a Django type story that didn't connect to it. I feel like yours, where my Hocus Pocus, I didn't feel like I shoehorned in my things. I built it around those three characters. And I feel like you just shoehorned in The Crow into a plot of a movie you wanted to make.
See, my thing with what you said about the whole race thing and the whole like movie set in 1800s, I feel like movies and television, as far as like Black people are the main characters that talk about race, they're either up through slavery, up to the Civil War, and then they basically start at the Civil Rights Movement to present day. There's really not a whole lot that goes from like 1865 to like 1960. It's just kind of a blank area as far as media is, and so that's why I intentionally tried to set it in between those two areas. So I don't really know of any movie that's set like post-slavery, pre-Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah, I think I've got my decision. At least where I'm headed. Tristan, any thoughts on the arguments? Did one of them sway you either way?
Well, last time it was like a huge runaway for me, and this one was a lot closer. But I do think I'm still leaning a little bit towards Johnny's here. I think the action just feels more like in faith to what I would have wanted from another Crow movie. So I'm leaning towards that, and I think seeing these directors from John Wick attached to this movie. That would be really exciting. That'd be like a headline that everyone would be sharing on Twitter and getting excited about. So I think that's something that swayed me too. So I'm leaning a little bit towards Johnny's.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think once again, I like where you both went with this in different directions. I think it was cool that you guys both had Chuck Norris in this, but did it in kind of different ways with where it was at and kind of their involvement. I like both director choices. The casts are good. I think what got it for me is I really like the idea of John Wick's of it being kind of in the John Wick style. I think that for me from Johnny is what sealed it. I liked both of your stories in different ways. I think Joe almost had me with bringing up the fact that there has been the Holocaust version of The Crow and things like that. I do think that it is kind of underrepresented in terms of times post-slavery until like the civil rights movement. But overall, I think the movie that I'd want to see more is Johnny's. But it was a real close one once again.
Sweet. I'll take it.
So I've actually had that basically exactly what I read out written on my computer as like an idea for a Crow movie. And when we knew we were going to reboot The Crow, I looked and it said last edited like July 2018. And I didn't even fucking edit anything from it. I was just like,
copy and
You
paste.
could have updated some of that and made it.
In 2018, you had Chuck Norris
I agree.
in that film?
no, not Chuck Norris. I just wrote in Chuck Norris as the bartender, but I had I was like, oh, I need somewhere, because I was like trying to figure out where I was going to put Chuck Norris in one of these movies, and I still had the thing about the bartender, so I just wrote, and the bartender played by Chuck Norris.
Joe had that whole pitch with Chuck Norris and then rigged the rules.
He was like, one day Chuck Norris will be in this movie, I swear.
Yeah.
All right, so I need a ringer here. And I know I've talked to Johnny, and now he's pretty confident in his Addams Family. So I don't know if I want to go with that yet. So I'm going to go with my Ghostbusters pitch.
All right. And before we do that, we have Jordan once again chiming in. Walker, Texas Ranger, taught John Wick everything he knows.
Yeah, that's right.
And Spinner 58 is Johnny's The Crow or Walker, Texas Ranger. Fight scene at the 35-minute mark.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand what that even means.
Yeah, honestly, I don't either.
I mean, if
I was getting Walker, Texas Ranger vibes from it a little bit.
That's funny. All right. Okay, Ghostbusters, Alex, tell us about it.
And I'm going to let Johnny go first because I've gone first twice.
Yeah, Joe's gone first twice. I'll go first.
Johnny's going first. All right. So we have Ghostbusters, a 1984 film directed by Ivan Reitman, 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the IMDb description is pretty simple. 3 former parapsychology professors set up shop as a unique ghost removal service. And that's really all they gave. So, Johnny, let's hear your pitch.
All right. I think I'm going to start with my pitch and then kind of go into my cast. I think that's the best way to do it. So my rule, I'm setting Ghostbusters in the MCU. This was another one I changed today, but I think I liked my pitch on this. Also, I didn't know there was a trailer for the new Ghostbusters movie, so I was originally going to basically have kids find the Ghostbuster equipment and become the new kid Ghostbusters. Then I watched that trailer when I was researching this and had to change my entire idea. So we went a different direction. So this is going to be one of those like kind of Disney Plus Marvel movies set in an alternate timeline that they're going to be making, I think, a lot of in the future. I think that's going to kind of change the way a lot of movies are made if they nail those. So my movie is Agent Coulson and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are working with Dr. Voodoo to take down the evil Black Talon, who is trying to retrieve an amulet that would give him power over the dead. They are unsuccessful, and Black Talon he releases ghosts and evil spirits to run rampage in New York. Agent Coulson turns to Brother Voodoo and says, I know who to call. Enter the Ghostbusters. They must work with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Dr. Voodoo to capture the ghosts released into the world and stop Black Talon from taking over New York with his powerful amulet. So mine's going to be a little crossover of some former people that have been in the movies before and new Ghostbusters that are already established in this universe. My director is someone that I think MCU is good at picking directors who have done things completely different and then give them a movie and just kind of keep that tone, but give them a bigger scale. So my director is Jorma Taccone, I think, or Taccone, not sure.
I think it's Taccone,
He directed Popstar and MacGruber. He's in The Lonely Island. I think he's super talented, and I think he could tell a really good story if he was given a big budget to do so. My Agent Coulson is the same guy. It's Clark Gregg. My Agent Maria Hill is going to be in this movie. That's Colby Smolder's characters from the Avengers movies. And then my Venkman is John Krasinski from The Office and all those movies and that he's doing now. My Ray is Charlie Day. My Egon is Danny Putty from Community and from the new show I just started watching, Mythic Quest, created by Rob McElhenney. And my Winston is going to be played by Donald Glover. And then my characters who are lesser known Marvel characters, but a couple of my favorites, Dr. Voodoo is going to be played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. He was probably most famous for his role in the Watchmen show. And then he's Black Manta in the Aquaman movies, which I thought he was good, but the script was just so bad. I want to give him a superhero role where he can have actually a good script. I think he could be a great Dr. Voodoo. And then my Black Talon, who is the villain, is another guy who kind of got screwed. Mike Coulter, who was Luke Cage in the Netflix show. And he was awesome, but that show got canceled, even though it was popular, just because Marvel didn't want Netflix to have rights to any of those things anymore. So that's my cast and my pitch.
Awesome.
So my director for my version of Ghostbusters is going to be Max Barbacow, who did Palm Springs, the Hulu movie. It had a good mix of sci-fi and comedy and drama, and which is what I want for my Ghostbusters movie. My Dr. Peter Venkman, originally played by Bill Murray, is going to be Simon Pegg. And then another thing I did with my movies, instead of making it all men or all women, I did 2 men and 2 women. So I did change up the names a little bit on that. But my Dr. Dana Spangler, taking over kind of the Egon role, is going to be Zoe Deschanel. Dr. Raymond Stantz is going to be John Cho. And then instead of Winston Zeddemore, it's going to be Winifred Zeddemore, played by Rosario Dawson. And then their secretary, Janine Melnitz. I'm kind of changing up the character a little bit. She's going to be very apathetic, and that's going to be played by Chelsea Peretti from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So for my version, I am skipping the origin, or at least fast forwarding through it and putting it in the opening credits. The first scene is Janine saying, "We got one," and them leaving the fire station to take on their first ghost as a company. Business booms as people report paranormal activity around New York City. Then editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons, says the ghosts are a hoax and the Ghostbusters are scam artists. Yes, J. Jonah Jameson, Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man's boss, is in my movie because just like Johnny, the rule I use is I set Ghostbusters in the MCU. The Ghostbusters agree to give Jameson a tour of the fire station and answer any and all questions. Jameson streams the whole thing on the Daily Bugle website directly, and then directly across the street from the fire station is the Sanctum Sanctorum from Doctor Strange. Strange and Baron Mordo, Chiwetel Ejiofor's character from the first one, are watching the live stream, and they realize the Ghostbusters do not understand what they are doing. They didn't create a new technology, they stumbled upon an ancient magic. Doctor Strange visits them, and he learns they're teleporting ghosts to a different dimension, an empty dimension, and Mordo is very intrigued by this. Questioning herself and wondering if she's as good of an inventor and scientist as she thought, Dana Spangler visits her mentor and colleague, Dr. Eric Selvig, which is Stellan Skarsgård's character from the Thor movies, and asks his opinion on what they have created. Selvig comforts her and says he has a friend, and where he is from, magic and science are one of the same. And then Mordo opens the dimension where they all trap the ghosts and releases them all on New York City in an attempt to overwhelm Doctor Strange so Mordo can become Sorcerer Supreme. The Ghostbusters team up with Doctor Strange to take on Baron Mordo and the ghosts. And instead of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, one of the ghosts takes over a giant Hulk statue. And that's my plot.
All right. Tristan, any comments or questions?
My question, I do have a question for Johnny. So are the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. sort of like the big high-profile characters that we'll see crossing over from the MCU, or are you going to have more, do you have any of the Avengers or any big cameos in your movie? Because Marvel does like to do cameos once in a while.
You can have cameos. The one character that actually fits with mine, which it's funny that Joe mentioned, is Doctor Strange, but I'm not going to have him be a big part of it. The reason I would have him cameo and it would be closer to the end of the film. Because I don't like when they have the superheroes involved in like all the fights. Like I get it, but like you need to have new people involved. So mine, if you don't know who Dr. Voodoo is in the comic books for Marvel, he ended up taking over as the Sorcerer Supreme for Doctor Strange. He deals with voodoo magic and black magic, and he's an African superhero that I think is cool. He's one of the only ones I know that was like a Haitian superhero that so I want to throw some love to him, and then at the end he can kind of team up with like introduce himself to Doctor Strange, and it can lead up to at least like if this was going to be like a show on the Disney Plus network for a character, I think him as a character would make a cool show. It'd be like the best version of what you could get for Doctor Strange, because in the comics, Doctor Strange is a super lame character that has cool powers, and they basically were like, what if we took a cool character that no one knows and just gave him the role of Doctor Strange? So I'd love for them to do that in Marvel. So Dr. Voodoo is basically Doctor Strange with more personality and a cooler character. So I would have him in it, but other than that, I don't need any of the other big Marvel heroes.
That was my big question. I think I got a good picture of those two. Have you got anything else to say, Zach?
Zach.
Who's Zach?
Oh, I wrote down the wrong.
Alex.
Alex. Yeah.
No, I like both pitches, so I want you two to battle it out. I'm glad that you both used this rule. This was a rule that I had when I was looking through this that I kind of felt was obvious. So
yeah, like
looking forward to hearing.
Both two franchises basically take place in New York City.
Yeah.
You said yours is in an alternate dimension, right? Or an alternate universe?
Yeah, it's going to be like one of the alternate timelines. So you're still going to have the same characters playing people, but since it's like still a movie, it kind of gives them an excuse to use Agent Coulson without saying it's completely in the MCU, because in the movies he's been dead, but in the show he's been alive. So that's kind of why I want that direction with it.
Yeah, see, that's my big problem with yours, is because the rule is set it in the MCU, and yours like, well, mine's kind of sort of in the MCU.
But mine is literally in the MCU. All of the shows that are coming out are still in the MCU. The MCU has expanded. But you know what I don't need? In the actual MCU, the Ghostbusters existing, like the thorough storyline, like that would be super stupid. So
my whole thing is set up.
Make sense in it is to make it's still completely the MCU. It's still the characters in it, but you have it in alternate timeline, and that's why you explain that the Ghostbusters exist. It's like DC using Earth 1 and Earth 2 and Earth 3 to bring in characters that aren't in other universes. That's what I did with it, because the thing that I would hate the most if the MCU was like, oh, here's Spider-Man 3 introducing the Ghostbusters, and this is now canon for, like the Iron Man franchise and everything. It'd be stupid.
See, but that's why I set mine up similar to like how I did, where Ghostbusters 2 could have like MCU references, but we don't necessarily need. I don't have like members of like the Avengers in the Ghostbusters themselves. Like it's not like Peter Parker is now a Ghostbuster. Like we don't have to have the MCU in the Ghostbusters 2 or 3. Like there could be references or maybe a tiny cameo. And same with the Avengers movies. We don't need the Ghostbusters in particular Avengers movies or to show up in Doctor Strange. They can move separately from each other. Maybe in Doctor Strange 2, you see the fire station across the street from the Sanctum Sanctorum, but you don't need the Ghostbusters necessarily to show up again. It's just, hey, they're in the same universe. They kind of operate alongside each other, but they don't necessarily have to constantly work together.
I mean,
yours is just like, I just don't really want the Ghostbusters in the MCU. I
don't want the Ghostbusters in the like canon MCU. That's going to be the cinematic universe. I want like the cinematic, I guess, putting in theaters, but the opportunity that you get from the MCU because of everything they set up in Endgame is now you can have alternate storylines, and you could bring in characters from anything you want for just one-off movies if you needed to, or like if you wanted to put them on TV shows. I think that'd be super cool. I think it'd be a waste of like the MCU movies if you put them in that through line. But like the Wanda and Vision show, all those things coming out, those look super interesting. Way more interesting than like the Scarlett Johansson Black Widow movie that looks like shit. Like, I don't need to see that. I don't need to see the MCU just like either going back to use their same characters or throwing in a bunch of stuff. Like, put alternate stuff on your Disney Plus, make it worth the money that I'm paying for Disney Plus, put something interesting on there. And then like you could spin it off into a show for some of the characters I introduced. I think my biggest problem with yours, though, getting away from this point, because I think we've hit on this enough, is Spider-Man belongs nowhere near the universe that you just set up. Like, I don't like.
I don't have Spider-Man. I have J. Jonah. I mean, I have J. Jonah Jameson, but
Spider-Man character, and then you bring in Doctor Strange. Like, it just feels all over the place. If you're gonna have J. Jonah,
there's multiple characters operating in New York City in the MCU.
Spider-Man. If you're gonna have Spider-Man, don't have like the universe of Doctor Strange, because I know they interact in those movies, but when you really get into what you're talking about, those are the worst Spider-Man comics, man.
So like, Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 3, his mentor is going to be Doctor Strange. Like, that's been announced and released. So you saying you don't want them to interact, well, that's what they're doing. So
all right, I think I have my decision on this one. Tristan, anything?
I do agree with Johnny that I think this would be best set in like a multiverse, Spider-Verse type of shoot-off show, like something that is not trying to be set within the canon of the MCU. But I think I'm leaning towards Joe's a little bit on this one. Not by a lot, but I do like that his just kind of feels more like something fitting within the MCU.
My one thing, because we hit on only the MCU, we didn't actually talk about Ghostbusters, because I want to get into the casting of these characters just real quick before you guys make your decision.
Yeah.
Venkman, I like, at least if you're going to recast, I'm cool with you doing whatever, but I think to keep the character, you have to have very similar personality traits. So, I don't think Joe hit those. Venkman is supposed to be this smooth talking, thinks he's a ladies' man, and he's dry humor. I think John Krasinski can do that. Ray is a wild card, so Charlie Day is the ultimate wild card. He fits that character perfectly. Egon is this nerdy character that straightened slinkies when he was a kid. Danny Putty basically played that character in Community and can play a bunch of different characters, but he can play off that. And then Winston, I want to give more of a personality because he's kind of just the random guy thrown in. And Donald Glover really fits that. And I think those guys are better cast than Joe. Just felt like he just threw random people in and they didn't actually have the personalities of the Ghostbusters cast.
Well, my problem with when I was casting that I found is I felt very like with you, because the alternate timeline, because you had like Donald Glover, who I guess could exist as Winston in an alternate timeline, even though he's what's his face's uncle.
Even though he's Miles.
Miles, yeah.
Yeah. So like technically in an alternate universe he could be, but that I kept like, oh, that would be a good person. Like I originally had Paul Rudd, but I kind of threw him out at first because it's Ghostbusters. But then I'm like, oh, he's Ant-Man, can't cast him. And I was just running through so many people that are like,
sounds like one of us thought through this a little more than the other one.
I don't know. I feel like yours, because you hammer at me a lot for TV people, and then you cast a lot of TV people. You're like, oh, that person.
All my TV people have been big movie stars, so
I don't know if Danny Putty's been a big movie star.
And Charlie Day has been in big movies, and John Krasinski is more of a movie star than a TV guy.
John Krasinski's like been a big movie star, but the other ones, I don't know if they've really been big movie stars.
Charlie Day's been in a bunch of movies, and if you don't think Charlie Day can pull off Ray, I don't know if you've ever understood Charlie Day. Same with Danny Putty as Egon. I pick people that are capable actors. I hit on people when they pick like, people from like The Boys and Game of Thrones and people who've never shown they can actually act. But these people have all shown they can act and are good. So that's my thing.
I mean, so have mine.
And you get Donald Glover and Danny Putty making an appearance again. Little shout out to the community without actually saying it.
All right. Did that change anything for you, Tristan?
I kind of pushed me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I think Johnny does have a much better cast than Joe's, and I think if I was gonna see a Ghostbusters movie, I'd much rather see those actors in those roles. I don't know if it uses the rule as well as it could. I think maybe the multiverse of the MCU is built for like, oh, we take this actor and then like we have him do a different version of a character. Or we do like a Doctor Strange, but he's this, or and I think he doesn't necessarily use the rule to his full advantage, but I do think he has a great cast on here. So I'm a little bit split. I'm not going to lie. I'm at like 50-50 right now.
Gotcha. Well, I would say that it definitely came close to changing my mind. And the biggest reason was Joe basically saying, I just didn't feel like I could, there was, like, not like he didn't think through the cast as much. Cause I do think Johnny has a stronger cast. However, I hate the idea of movies that are like set in like the MCU universe, but are alternate timelines. I don't like that with what DC's doing. To me, it's like, I just don't like it existing if it's going to be existing in a different time. And there's other, like, are you still going to have the same people playing it? I don't like it. So for me, I went with Joe on this one.
Hell yeah.
I just thought that I liked his. I like the fact that you don't necessarily have to tie the Ghostbusters into all the other Marvel movies or anything like that in the future. But just having this, having J.K. Simmons in it is a little nice touch too. So the score is now 2-1. Johnny still has the lead. And we do have a couple of live comments. So first we have a new listener to the show, Joe Borbeau, telling us to put the ghost back in the box.
What?
Put the bunny back in the box and put the ghost back in the box.
Put the ghost back in the box. There you go. Oh, fuck. I should have made it a Con Air spinoff.
Jordan is very happy that Johnny also thinks that Black Widow looks like, quote, moldy garbage.
It's true. Yeah.
And then we have another comment from Jordan as well. You don't understand Charlie Day sounds like the same tone as, oh, you drink Bud Light by a beer snob.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't drink Bud Light and you should understand Charlie Day. So that's on you.
So Johnny, what film are you thinking next?
We shall see. Man, that was again, that was one I changed like this morning, but Joe's pitch sounded so bad. I'm gonna go with wild card Nightmare on Elm Street.
All right.
And I'll go first, I guess.
Going first? All right. So Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984 film directed by Wes Craven, has a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the description is the monstrous spirit of a slain child murderer seeks revenge by invading the dreams of teenagers whose parents were responsible for his untimely death. And just another little fun fact on this. This was Johnny Depp's first feature film.
It's true. All right. So I went a completely different direction with what I originally thought I'd be doing, but I want to there's not many ways to make a new movie about Nightmare on Elm Street interesting. So instead of making a new version of Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm going to set mine in the 1970s. My movie is going to be a prequel to the original 1984 Nightmare on Elm Street. So mine comes out in 1979. It's directed by Wes Craven, the only person in the world who could ever handle Nightmare on Elm Street. And Robert Englund is the only person who ever should play Freddy Krueger, so I still get to use him as my Freddy Krueger. This is my storyline. The first of the series, Robert Englund plays a child murderer who is found out by the parents of the town. He is chased into an old building at the end and buried alive. Literally, the parents know it will lead to Freddy Krueger becoming more dangerous dead than he ever was alive. I didn't write out a really, really long pitch because his origin story I know pretty well. But I think the thing that the movie lacked was a proper movie to kind of set up the character. I think him murdering children is just as much, if not more scary than him haunting your dreams. So the movie's going to be focused around Robert Englund as the villain. He's going to be killing kids. The parents find him out, burn him alive. He's not going to have like the classic Freddy Krueger face, but he's going to have the claws. He's going to have the sweater. He's going to have the hat. And then he's going to be killed at the end. And then at the end of the movie, like the very end of the movie, right before the credits, one of the main characters, I didn't really cast anyone else because it's going to be throwaway like actors and actresses that were in the original Nightmare on Elm Street that, were good for their roles, but they're going to basically it's going to be a bunch of kids. And I'm not going to look up a bunch of kid actors from the 70s to put in this. So it's going to be someone is asleep. And then at the end, they get murdered in their sleep by Freddy's claw, and then cut to credits. So I'm changing history, and we are making Nightmare on Elm Street, the one that we got with Freddy Krueger, basically like the Jason 2, the Friday and the 13th type thing, where the first one is different than the rest of the movies. So I'm changing history with my pitch.
All right, Joe.
All right, I went in a completely different direction. So I'm just gonna say it. The rule I used is one must be directed by and star 4 nominees from the different categories of the 95th Academy Awards. So my director is gonna be Spike Lee. And my writer producer, who was also nominated as a producer that year for a little extra, is gonna be Jordan Peele. My Freddy Krueger is gonna be, just as scary, but a little bit more. He's gonna have some one-liners, but he's gonna be a little more calm, cool, and collected. Is gonna be Mahershala Ali. My Glenn Lance is going to be Bradley Cooper. My Tina Gray is going to be Glenn Close. And my Nancy Thompson is going to be Amy Adams. And then I said Freddy Krueger chasing teenagers is played out. We've seen it a million times. Doing it that way again would almost make a reboot pointless. Why not just make Nightmare on Elm Street 27? So for my version, we open the movie cutting between the morning routines of 3 people, the characters played by Bradley Cooper, Glenn Close, and Amy Adams. We see them have nice families, living in big mansions with expensive cars. We learn very quickly they all have offices at the Capitol building in D.C., and they're all politicians. During their morning routine, they all saw something in the news about a factory burning down. Bradley Cooper saw it in a tweet. Glenn Close read it in the paper. Amy Adams heard about it on the radio in her car. That afternoon, Bradley Cooper's character falls asleep at his desk. He sees a figure with a bladed glove chase after him in his dream. Just as the figure slashes at his back, he wakes up and stands up. His suit jacket has 3 slashes in it. Throughout the movie, the figure attacks the 3 of them in their dreams, getting closer and closer to killing them. The characters learn the figure is Freddy Krueger, a man who worked in the factory that burned down. He could have... is Alex gone?
We lost our judge.
Oh, no.
It's important. Keep reading, Joe. He doesn't need to hear it.
Yeah, he does. So Alex is gone. Yes, give us your Nicolas Cage impression. Kill time.
Put the bunny back in the box. I said, put the bunny back in the box. That's about all I know from that movie line-wise.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else I can really do here. All right, Alex texted us. Internet just completely went out.
Well,
Not
that's
great
awesome.
for us.
Not awesome. So we're
Zoinks.
on a roll with technical difficulties. Just like every week, technical difficulty after technical difficulty after technical difficulty.
A little bit.
I don't know. Do we want to call an
Hey,
audible?
he's back.
Oh, yes. All right.
Sorry, can you just restart your entire thing?
Really?
Well, I heard your cast, but like,
Okay. So we got my cast. So Freddy Krueger chasing teenagers played out. You hear that?
mm-hmm. Yep.
So for my version, we open the movie cutting between the morning routines of these 3 characters. They see about the factory burning down various ways. Bradley Cooper is at his desk. He falls asleep, wakes up, 3 slashes in the back of his coat jacket. He sees a figure throughout the movie. Freddy Krueger's chasing him, and they learn that the guy that's chasing them is Freddy Krueger, a man who worked in the factory that burned down. He could have lived and been saved in time. However, funding had recently been cut to the fire departments in their jurisdiction, and the fire department didn't have the resources. The 3 of them are corrupt, laundered money, moved money around, and kept it for themselves. Now Freddy wants revenge. Throughout the movie, he slowly kills the 3 of them one by one as they fight to stay awake. It's a movie that is scary and horrifying, but also deals with classism and racism. And that's my pitch.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so I have a question for each of you. Johnny, you elected to skip the, what people know Freddy for, which is the dream killing. Obviously, I understand that it's a prequel, but I guess, is it still a Freddy movie, or is it just? I feel like it's a different slasher movie potentially if you're not having him do it in the dreams. So, kind of, what's your? How do you? Does it still feel like a Freddy movie? I guess.
So if you don't know, I guess, the history of Freddy Krueger, he's a child murderer who is found out by the people in the town, and then he's burned alive. They don't really get into that story, even though that is what I feel like is an incredible backstory for a villain. And then the thing they do in Friday the 13th that I actually really like, in the original one, they give Jason's backstory without him ever being in the movie. So he was a kid who was picked on. He was drowned in camp, and the mom blames the camp counselors because they were busy, having sex and doing all these things and ignoring her son. So she goes on a rampage and kills the camp counselors, involved in the original, like her son dying. So what I'm doing with mine is we're still going to have the same Nightmare on Elm Street movies that we've always gotten, but instead of the first one being the first movie where you don't really know what's going on, you have Freddy Krueger set up as a character, his evil nature, and he is a child murderer. And then you set up at the end, it's basically like Jason finding the hockey mask. You have Jason kill someone in their dreams at the end, and then no one knows what's happening with this character. And then 5 years later, the new Nightmare on Elm Street comes out, and it's, him murdering people in his dreams. And I think it's even more critically acclaimed and even more acclaimed as what it is and thought of as the Empire Strikes Back of the Nightmare series, rather than just like they made two good Nightmare movies and it was the first one they made and a new Nightmare, and everything else sucked. So you still get his same personality because you have the same actor. You still get the same tones because you have Wes Craven, but you have what would have been a movie in the 70s that you have a child murderer that would be tough to watch. And then it leads into something that you've never seen before with someone killing them in their dreams. And then you have people anticipating the return of this character for 5 years. I think that's a really cool, unique way to introduce Freddy Krueger.
Okay, my only question on that last bit. So I know the rule is the 1970s movie. So are we saying that this with this rule? I just want to make sure I'm understanding it properly. That this movie would technically have came out before.
Yep. Because it came out in 1979, so it would be before the other movies.
Gotcha. Okay, and then Joe. I think Johnny raised a point in his pitch about the idea of, you can't really have a Nightmare on Elm Street that's not directed by Wes Craven without Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. How do you still make it feel like a Freddy movie with your casting and director choice?
By having a director who's done drama that has comedic moments in it, like Black Klansman that just came out, and casting a director or casting an actor that's can have like funny one line, like even like Green Book, not a great movie. I mean, it's fine, it's capable, but his character still has funny like moments in that movie, and he's played roles with characters that have funny moments. I feel like if you try to cast an actor to basically be like, hey, do exactly what Robert Englund did, you're gonna fail every time, because it's just like a very specific, precise thing. And so I tried to cast someone who could do something different yet similar, where he's not going to be as over the top, he's not going to be as crazy, but he can still be menacing, but also funny at the same time. And I feel like, hey, I'm going to make a version that's Wes Craven, and I'm going to bring Wes Craven back and Robert Englund back. It's like a little bit of a cop-out.
Yeah, unless you said it in the 70s and you make it a good version of it.
But I feel like you tried to get the best of both worlds, where I feel like, I don't know if if you've never seen a Friday the 13th movie or a Nightmare on Elm Street movie before, and all you see is your movie, then I don't know if anyone really cares about it. Like seeing his gloved hand at the end.
Yeah, because no one cared about the original Friday the 13th, and no one cared about The Hills Have Eyes, which was Wes Craven's first movie in 1977. This dude was already like one of the biggest up-and-coming horror directors because of The Hills Have Eyes. So yeah, you're going to care. It's going to be a very good movie, and then you get the sequel that's going to be super highly anticipated 5 years later. And your movie, literally every single thing you said to defend your piece of shit movie is what they said when they made that shitty 2010 version with Jackie Earle Haley. Oh, we're going to still give him one-liners, but he's going to be scary. Like, he's not going to be funny. So we're going to put Jackie Earle Haley in it. That's what you did.
There's a big difference between Jackie Earle Haley and
the worst of the entire series, and that is saying a lot. because they were like, we're going to make it more serious. We're not going to have, like you said it yourself, no one else can be Freddy instead of, other than Robert Englund without changing the character. And you change the character to the 2010 version of the movie. Yours sounds literally the same as that movie. No difference.
I disagree because there's a massive difference between Spike Lee and whoever the hell directed
There's
that
not
movie.
a difference between that because have you ever seen the Old Boy remake? Have you ever seen Spike Lee's movies when he's told you can't do what you want, you have to make a remake? Your movie is not going to actually have racial issues. Your movie is going to be like every other Spike Lee movie that I hope he has completely gotten away from, because his career has basically went, you get 2 movies that you want to make, and then you get 1 movie that we want you to make. And then you get 2 movies that you want to make, and then you get 1 movie that we want you to make. And every time it's a movie that Hollywood wants him to make, it's like the shitty remake of Old Boy that is so unwatchable and ruined the character because Spike Lee didn't give a shit about the original source material because he wanted to make what he wanted to make. That is what you are doing with him. You're saying, here's your Hollywood Friday the 13th movie, make something. We're going to, if that movie came out, there would not actually be racial issues in it because they'd be like, well, we need a big budget, Friday the 13th with Spike Lee. You can't actually have your personal belief into this movie, so you have to take one of those things out.
But I feel like Spike Lee would be more attracted to and more interested in doing a movie where like a bunch of rich white politicians screwed over these people in a factory, and this like dark evil guy is like, fuck it, I'm getting revenge for what happened, than a movie that's just like Old Boy.
So you're making Freddy Krueger, who in every other movie was a child hinted at molester and murderer. You are making him the sympathetic character of your new Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and you don't see a fucking problem with that?
You can change a character's backstory.
Not that much. You can't be like because the reason that people shit on the Joker movie, which I thought was great, the people that didn't understand it were like the ones like, you're asking me to sympathize with this terrible character. No, the movie's not asking you to sympathize with him. The movie is telling you a different perspective on why he became who he is. Your movie is literally saying sympathize with a character that as a child molester and murderer. That was that version. And stupid.
That was that version.
That's your version, and it's a character that is famous for that. Like, you can't change it that much and then expect people not to think the other way about it. You can't make him a hero of a movie. That ruins the character. It ruins the franchise. It ruins everything about it. That's even worse than the 2010 version.
I disagree.
Yeah, well, you're wrong.
Joe, I'm okay with this conversation. I've heard enough. Joe, do you have anything to pick out on Johnny's?
Yeah, like my whole thing against his is I feel like it's a cop out to bring back Robert Englund and Wes Craven, and I feel like I said before, he wants it both ways, where it's like you kind of have that feeling of knowing the previous Nightmare on Elm Street movies with some of the anticipation of knowing what's happening, of knowing what happens to Freddy, but also it's a movie that they've never seen before because none of the other Nightmare on Elm Street movies have come out. Like when the clawed hand appears at the end, like people are just going to be like, what the fuck is this? This is confusing. I don't get this. And I don't think there's going to be that anticipation for that movie 5 years later.
Yeah, that's so wrong. And saying something is a cop-out, for me, knowing how to use a rule better than you did is just like, it's a fallacy. You can't just say it's a cop-out because I use the rule well. That's the second time you've done that. And it's the same thing with the MCU one, which wasn't a cop-out. It was just a unique way to use the rule. This is a better way to use the rule. It opens up opportunities. You could have done the same thing, and you did.
I would have thought, I could bring back Robert Englund as Freddy.
Like, a movie where you say, we're going to turn a child molester into a black superhero, and that is a problem.
All right, Tristan, any thoughts?
I'm definitely leaning in one direction. I think that both gave solid pitches, but I just don't really see Joe's movie fitting together as much as Johnny's does, and I think that Johnny used the rule super creatively. I think going back in time and like retroactively making the Friday the 13th Part 1 version of Nightmare on Elm Street would be really interesting, and I think that I love going back and watching those first three Friday movies and just seeing like slowly how Jason builds up as a character, and that's still exciting, even though when you don't know people still saw those movies despite not having could become in love with Jason. So I kind of saw the same concept here. People don't need to know Freddy to be invested in this kind of a slash movie, especially at that time. So I'm definitely going towards Johnny's on that. I think it was a really, really good use of the rule.
Yeah, I think there were two completely different pitches. I think if I had a critique on Johnny's, I do understand where Joe's coming from, and like the sense of like if this was an actual prequel, like if this came after the original, I think it'd make a little bit more sense if it was like kind of retroactively a prequel rather than it coming out before Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
But they tried that and it was terrible.
And
the 2010 version. Yeah, the 2010 version, they tried to do both, and it was garbage. So I want the actual backstory, which was really good, to just be set before the first movie.
Yeah, and I could still understand. I mean, it's one of those, with the way the rule worked, I think you did it well still. I think that you found a good workaround. Joe's, I did struggle with the fact that you made Freddy a kind of more sympathetic character. I don't like the idea of, he's got such a dark past that like, even if you can change it, I think that changing it just makes it weird to whatever person he ends up being, especially to kind of turn into a racial story with a black superhero type thing. Knowing Freddy's actual past is a little, I can't get past that. So for me, Johnny won this one.
You're damn right. You're damn right.
And also, I will say, I understand where Joe's coming from, that it could be a cop out on Wes Craven and Robert Englund, but I just don't really have any desire to ever see the 2010. I don't even think I made it through the whole movie.
It's so bad. It's so bad. That's what I was thinking of how to do this, and I looked at the way Joe did it, and I was like, no, there's literally no new version of Nightmare that's interesting. So the only thing I could do to make this movie interesting was do what I did with it. And I think for people, when they use a rule creatively, that isn't a cop out. That's just using a rule well that hasn't been used before like that. So I was proud of the way I used that rule. Get your cop out nonsense out of here, Kevin Smith.
Fuck off. I wasn't thinking like the exact way you used it, but I was kind of similar, doing like, I wasn't going to do like a prequel. I was just going to do another Freddy movie, but set it in the 70s and do like Freddy Krueger and bring Freddy Krueger and Wes Craven back. But like, I personally thought it was a cop out for what I was thinking. So I just went with a different direction. So it wasn't just like,
opening up them rule books, baby. You got to think outside the box.
All right. So
there we go.
I need something that I think Johnny might not be good at, because I'm afraid of his Addams Family pitch is. So I'm going to go with The Purge.
All right. The Purge, 2013 film directed by James DeMonaco, received a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. And kind of the background on this is a wealthy family is held hostage for harboring a target of murderous syndicate during the Purge, a 12-hour period in which any and all crime is legal. This one for me, I'll be honest, is probably the one that I've been most excited about, because I remember being super excited when I heard about the idea of this movie. And I think it's one of the greatest examples of awesome idea, awful execution. So interested to hear what you guys have to say.
I'll go first. I didn't say that, but Johnny went first the last few times, so I'll go first this time.
Sure.
So similar to Johnny last round, I made this a 1970s movie. My director is going to be John Schlesinger, who directed Marathon Man, a good thriller, and Midnight Cowboy, which won Best Picture. And this I didn't have an exact year, but it's like 1977, 1978 is, around the time. My James Sandon, the main character, is going to be Robert Redford. His wife, Mary, is going to be played by Faye Dunaway. And their two kids, Charlie and Zoe, are going to be Danny Bonaducci and O'Neill. And then there's three invaders that invade the house. The leader of the invaders is going to be Robert De Niro. Invader 2 is going to be Tim Curry. And then Invader 3 is going to be Carol Kane. So with the high inflation and skyrocketed gas prices of the late 1970s, there's a lot of unrest in America. Senator James Sandon introduces an idea of the Purge, where for 12 hours, one day a year, all crime is allowed. It passes all branches of the government. During the Purge, Senator Sandon locks down his house and makes sure his family is safe when he excuses himself to make a phone call. There is a knock at the door. The senator tells his family not to answer it. There's another knock. Again, they don't answer. The sound of glass breaking can be heard, and 3 invaders walk in with guns. The senator fears for his and his family's life, but the leader of the invaders, De Niro, says if everything goes according to plan, no one has to die. The leader of the invaders is shocked and offended that the senator doesn't recognize him or the other invaders. We see through flashbacks the leader's character is a maintenance man at the Capitol where the senator's office is. Tim Curry's character is a janitor, and Carol Kane's character is an intern. They force the family to watch live broadcasts of the Purge and all of the deaths. It is revealed that the 3 of them learned the real reason the senator created the Purge. He was planning on committing fraud and insider trading and various other white-collar crimes, which would make him millions, all while other people died. While the invaders are distracted, the mom and kids move the clocks back 1 hour. The invaders think the Purge is going, but when it's actually over, one of the kids calls the police. There's a shootout, the dad ends up dead, and the invaders go to prison, and the movie's just about classism in the United States in the 1970s. And like how Johnny's pitch was, mine would have been released in like 77, 78.
Gotcha. All right, Johnny?
So I agree with Alex. This is a franchise that has hit on good ideas but has never executed a great movie. So I want to take some of the good ideas that it's used. I want to twist those into what I think is a more interesting film. So my director that I think fits well with this is Spike Lee, who also directed, obviously, Black Klansman. I'm using the rule that Joe just used on the last film, or last movie, the 91st Academy Award winners. So I'm debating what's best. We'll do this way. I'll read my cast and then the pitch. So my director is Spike Lee. My lead, I guess, like the dad, you'll get it in the pitch, is Mahershala Ali, who was nominated for Green Book. His wife is going to be played by Lupita Nyong'o. Their daughter is going to be Ava, and that is going to be played by Quvenzhané Wallis, who was in Beast of the Southern Nations and a bunch of other movies, but that's probably her biggest role. My kind of lead villain, he's going to be a police officer played by Bradley Cooper, obviously nominated that year for A Star is Born. I'm going to have a politician that pushed the Purge into existence. That's going to be played by Glenn Close, who nominated that year for The Wife. And my Sandra, who's another character in my pitch, is going to be played by Yalitza Aparicio, who was nominated for her role as Marta in Roma. So those are my characters and my director. So this is my pitch for The Purge. One day a year, all crime is legal, including murder. This was originally a bill created with the idea that for the rest of the year, there will be far less crime. The politician responsible for the Purge is played by Glenn Close. She gained backing from powerful and wealthy organizations such as the NRA to push the law forward. Cut to a family eating breakfast. There's news on the TV in the background about the ongoing Black Lives Matter protests. Ava wants to attend the protest after work, but her parents tell her it is too dangerous as the next day is Purge Day. Ava is upset, leaves for her waitressing shift. She sneaks off after her shift with Sandra, their dishwasher, to the protest. That is played by the woman from Roma. The protest is only to go until 10 p.m., so everyone has 2 hours to get home before the Purge. Chaos ensues when police in riot gear, led by Bradley Cooper's character, gas the protesters and start arresting people. Ava and Sandra end up hiding away in the alley, but then the Purge announcement comes up. They are trapped outside during the most dangerous night of the year. Ava's parents must abandon the safety of their house to find their daughter amidst the Purge. It is a fight for survival that delves into similar political aspects of the real series, dealing with oppression and the Purge being a way to rid the USA of minorities. So those are the political issues that we're going with. Bradley Cooper plays a bloodthirsty, racist police officer, and he's going to be hunting for Ava and Sandra throughout the film. And then I think it gives a good aspect of you have two people stuck outside the Purge, two kids that are afraid, and you have two parents that are trying to avoid everyone in the Purge to try to find their daughter. I think it gives a good dynamic, and I think it kind of combines the good aspects of what the franchise has given with some new dynamic to it. And I have a capable director to do it, and something that's more fitting with his directional style. So that's my pitch.
All right, good. I'll go to Tristan first. Do you have any questions, comments,
Yeah, I
initial
think I
thoughts?
got a good picture of Johnny's movie. I need a little bit more information on Joe's. I guess I'm not totally sure. I see this as a '70s movie. That I need a little more detail on what makes this so exciting. Why does it need to be out in 1970, whatever? And why was that such a significant part of this movie?
Because at the time there was like super high inflation rates. You had the whole Watergate scandal just a few years earlier, just like normal, a lot of financial and political unrest at that time.
Anything else, Tristan?
That's all that I had.
Real quick before I let you guys battle it out, Joe, my one question is, what was the reason behind having the politicians, I guess, reasoning for the purge being white collar crime rather than I feel like that might not be sinister enough to like really like start a thing such as like the purge where people can just murder each other.
Because the guy's a fucking asshole. Like that's part of the thing is I'm gonna let all of these people kill each other, and I don't really care about that because I'm trying to make money, which I feel like is very like political kind of. It's relatable to like the rich people and the politicians, and like I don't care how this affects people that aren't me. I'm out here trying to make money, and so that was kind of the message and like the symbolism and whatnot I was going for.
Okay, and then Johnny, are you going to have the parents do any killing or anything like that while they're out looking for their kids?
Yep. They're trying to find their daughter, so they're going to be killing, but it's going to be the people that are murdering people. They're going to be trying to find their daughter, but also seeing, the evil purge people. And it's going to be a lot of police officers killing people on the streets or attacking them, and the parents are going to go up and save those people against the will. So what I want the characters kind of dynamic to be, the wife, Lupita Nyong'o, is going to be pushing to be the one to save the daughter, to save these people. We got to do everything we can to make sure these people live. And then Mahershala Ali is, he's going to be a former police officer who is retired, and he doesn't want to, go out there, and he thinks the best thing we can do is save ourselves and be safe. But he keeps getting pushed by his wife. And by the end, his big like character swing is he starts seeing what's so wrong about all of this and starts, defending people on the street. So that's going to be his character shift and his like learning experience, because you always need at least some of that in a good movie, and that's what all these movies have lacked, is any sort of growth from characters.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let's battle. Joe, you can go. You have anything?
Yeah, my main thing against Johnny's is what he said against mine before of like Spike Lee. When he does a movie he wants to do, it's better. And I don't know if like trying to reboot and kick off a new franchise is a movie that Spike Lee's like, oh, this is where I get full creative freedom and doing what I want to do.
Because the difference between what I said about your Spike Lee movie doing Nightmare is he would never in a million years get creative freedom for a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. The Purge, basically the only thing you need in a Purge movie is the idea of the Purge happening. Everything else Spike Lee would get complete creative control over. These aren't like huge budget, super successful movies. The first one made money because it was made with no budget and it was just a home invasion movie. But the rest of the franchise has completely fallen off. So the studios were like, we want to reboot this. We want to give this to someone who can have creative control. This makes more sense for something that Spike Lee would want to do rather than a franchise of a famous character that is made millions and millions and millions of dollars, like Nightmare series. So I think this fits well with what he wants to do. I think he can do. Sorry, I don't know if that's my mic or what that is. I think this fits well with like the political aspects of what he is trying to do in it, and I think this fits his directing style in the actor that I chose much better.
Yeah, I still feel though it's like a multi-film franchise that they have a TV show that's based on like a studio. It's not just gonna be like Spike Lee, do whatever the fuck you want. Like even Christopher Nolan, like he's a big. I mean, obviously his movies are bigger budget and stuff, but like studios still tell him what to do. So I just don't know if like for a big franchise trying to get it going, like especially to reboot a franchise like The Purge. The studio is definitely going to want their hands involved to make sure it's done right. They're not just going to be like, Spike Lee, do what you want. That's fine. We're okay with that.
Yeah, but I think with Spike Lee's growth and with the way the Purge has been, I think the most important thing with it is getting into the political aspects while also making it kind of a violent movie. And I think Spike Lee can do those things well. This isn't going to be like Old Boy where you have him completely misunderstanding characters. Yes, he's not going to have completely creative control where he can do whatever he wants, but he's going to have creative control over the characters, and that is the aspect that I think the Purge movies missed, because there's no one memorable from any of the movies. The characters are lame and not good. So if you give Spike Lee the creative control just over basically the characters and having police brutality in there, having racism, having all these different aspects, I think it's way more interesting that the Purge was created and way more relevant to where this country is. Unfortunately, that the Purge was created to oppress and get rid of minorities in the U.S. rather than some guy himself trying to get rich. I think that lessens the idea of what you could do with the Purge. I think there's so many ways you can go with it, and yours just sounds like the same thing that's been coming out. That's just very lame, and it's not very exciting like that. Even if you had an idea of yours, if yours was, I'm going to be caught for insider trading, but if I make the Purge, I'm going to sell all my stocks in this one company, and then I'm going to have people that work for me go murder people, the high up in that company. I just made a goddamn mint. Like, you don't have those things in yours, and that is the only way that like the insider trading thing could really be interesting. Yours just sounds like it was kind of thrown together, and it doesn't actually get into the importance of why the Purge was created.
I mean, because mine, I wanted it more of like the smaller home invasion style movie, similar to the first, but with corrections done to the first. Because I feel like the first one, it should have been someone more involved with the idea of the Purge instead of just like a random kind of guy. And like, we're just going to invade your house because whatever. I like the idea of it's like this guy getting his comeuppance in the smaller story of I'm going to fuck over these people just trying to get rich. And then these other people that are the lower sides of society, you have like a janitor, an intern, a maintenance worker, all realizing what he's doing and them deciding to get even during the Purge and to stop him from being able to do it.
I just think the Purge is very relevant to the times now. I don't think it is that relevant to the 1970s. Like, I get you're throwing that, it was a time of political unrest, but I think what you could do with the Purge nowadays is so much more important and so much more relevant to what the movies tried to go for with today's political environment. And the way that I'm going with it involves current political issues. Your movie wouldn't hold up by the 80s. No one would care. Once the economy is booming, no one would care about it, and it would be forgotten over time. It's not going to be the reason that the Purge would made originally,
because people
just been
because people over to get rich in the 70s. That's not a thing that happens anymore.
Yeah, I don't know why you just said because you talked over me, but other than that, I mean, again, like your movie, it would just be a bad like home invasion movie, just like the original one was. Like, home invasion movies are only made when studios don't have the money to really do anything else with it. So I think opening them up, the Purge has made some money. You get more of a budget if you do it nowadays, and you say, okay, we're giving a big budget to Spike Lee to do pretty much what he wants with it. Not everything. We'd give him some notes, obviously, but the original Purge was so bad because they didn't have any money or any budget, and they were just like, well, we have all these ideas, but we need to just make a home invasion movie to make it, exciting. And your movie would have been that, but then there were no sequels made until 40 years later. So it's just forgotten over time, and mine is relevant to the time now and has a good cast, good actors, and I think will make an impact on people.
Yeah, what I was saying was, I think rich people screwing over poor people has been a thing that's happened since money was created. Like, I think it'd be relevant in the 70s and be relevant now, and it's an alternate. Basically making that movie in 1978 is an alternate history, so it's not necessarily that no sequel would ever be made between 1978 or 1977, whatever, to 2013. Like, there could have been more sequels after. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that no sequels were ever made for 40 years, just because I made that version in the 70s.
I mean, yeah.
All right. I think I know where I'm leaning. Tristan, thoughts?
Yes, I'm leaning a little bit towards Johnny here. I think this movie could fit well in the 70s. I didn't hold that much against Joe, but I think you guys both went for like, let's really lean into that political commentary of the Purge, and I looked, okay, let's see how well Joey's movie in the 70s would have held up to the political commentary then, and let's see how much Johnny's would have held up now, and kind of compare those two movies that way. And I just think Johnny's feels like it comments more directly onto the current times, and Joe's is just like, oh yeah, sure, there's a rich guy and he's bad, and that's not like very direct of a commentary. So I just went a little bit more for Johnny's on that one.
All right. I think it was interesting taking it back to the 70s for Joe. I liked the cast a lot, and I liked the story overall. My question that I had to you, I think you answered it well in terms of why he's just doing white collar crime. But I think if you just frame it in the sense of a senator, all he cares about is himself. He's not really thinking about the other consequences. And then also him getting his comeuppance, I think it all kind of ties in together. And I like that little subplot of it coming against him in the future. Johnny's, I think I'd like yours more if it didn't involve the police doing the crime. I think that from an aspect of the story to tell would maybe be like, yeah, this is a population control against minorities or something like that. That I get, but I think involving the police side of that, I feel like it makes it a little bit too obvious that that's what was happening. I prefer that it's like almost in the background it's happening, like the government is doing this because that's like, oh, it'll help do population control, rather than it being like straight up Bradley Cooper as a cop is just like hunting down people on the streets.
Okay, real quick counterpoint is, but like you look at what's happening in America today, and what's always happened is you have all of these killings of black people by police, and if Spike Lee is going to make a political movie, he is going to address that, and he is going to push hard on that aspect. So that's why I went hard.
But wouldn't the argument? I would think that the argument against that would be that's already happening without the Purge, though. If that's
how many movies have been made about it? How many movies have been made, making police like actually the villains of a film? Pretty much none. I mean, you have even movies like Fruitvale Station, but in that it's like, oh, this was an accident and stuff. You don't actually have movies being made. And if there's one person who can make that movie today, it's Spike Lee, where he can actually villainize the police, which is what some people need to see in this country.
But I still think that the argument on top of that would be that it's the system overall. And for that reason, I still...
The system allows them to do this.
I think it's two different. For me, it's two different issues in the terms of like the story you're telling and kind of what the Purge has been. So for me, I went with Joe's film. I enjoy the idea of seeing this as a 1970s film. I like the idea that the senator gets his for kind of doing this, and an unintended consequence for him just trying to get rich. So for me, it is now 3-2 with Joe winning that one.
We have a new nomination for worst decision come the award season. That was a terrible decision.
I get what Alex is going for. I think of like, why do they need the Purge when they kind of do it already? And
that's where like because it doesn't really make sense to hide it behind the Purge at that point. You're not telling a story that's not already being told, I guess.
I mean, I guess I don't know. That's just stupid, but whatever. We'll go with it. I think that decision was only made because I was up 3-1. I think if it was tied, I would have won. But no, a different direction. I'm calling shenanigans.
It's not what would have happened. But all right, what film do you want?
All right. Well, Joe and I kind of made a pact to make Addams Family our last pitch, so we're going to go with Nosferatu.
Oh, I thought we said it doesn't necessarily have to be. I thought right now is the perfect time for Addams Family.
Tiebreaker, and I'm going to go with Nosferatu. Because I think at this point, I think that's probably the best. This may or may not give you a shot to tie it up and make it interesting.
All right, who goes first?
Who went first last time? I think you did. I'll go first.
Yeah, I don't fucking remember.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Nosferatu is a 1922 film with a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, directed by F.W. Murnau. I don't know how to say that.
Who knows?
And the description is pretty simple. It's a vampire. Count Orlok expresses interest in a new residence and real estate agent Hutter's wife. That's all it gave me. So
it's a very simple plot.
All right. For those of you who don't know about Nosferatu, it was a movie made because they didn't have the rights to the story of Dracula, so they made a vampire movie and just named him Nosferatu and basically told the story of Dracula. So it's been a movie that's made a million times. It just has a fun title that I think is probably mostly known in pop culture today because of SpongeBob. Weird to say because it's a great classic silent film, but I chose to go a different direction with it because I think the most famous thing you need from Nosferatu is just the look of the character, and the story is something that has been told over and over and over and over and over again. So I am going a completely different direction, but I'm keeping the character of Nosferatu. So I am making my movie a Frat Pack movie. My director is Ben Stiller, who did Zoolander and Tropic Thunder. My Nosferatu is played by said Ben Stiller. I'll get into my other cast in a minute, but I will pitch and then I will tell you the rest of my cast. So my pitch, Ben Stiller as Nosferatu, a vampire who has always been reviled for being the most hideous of the bunch, wants to fit in with the other vampires. He must prove to the cool vampires that he is more than just an old man who can't hang. Most of the vampires resent him for being the reason that they are vampires, as he was born a vampire and they were all turned, and it's all because of him. The biggest event of the year is the Monster Mash Bash, and Nosferatu tries to plan his way into the party where he believes he can win the affection of the rest of the vampires and the other monsters. So that's my pitch. It's going to be a comedy. It's going to be closer to a Tropic Thunder parody of movies, but also have some Zoolander aspects of his character. Kind of being naive and thinking he can win the affection of the rest. My kind of cool vampire gang is going to be played. The lead is going to be Vince Vaughn. And then his kind of henchmen-ish people are Paul Rudd, Owen Wilson, and David Koechner. My Frankenstein's monster is going to be played by Will Ferrell. And my werewolves are going to be John C. Reilly and Luke Wilson. So that is my pitch and my cast and my movie. He's still going to have the look of the old Nosferatu, by the way. The demented vampire.
All right. So I did something very different. My director is going to be Mike Flanagan. He directed Dr. Sleep. He directed, he's in charge of The Haunting of Bly Manor. He directed Haunting of Hill House. He's very good at haunted house style horror films. And the rule I used is I have to use the cast of another movie on the list, which was the hardest rule I've ever had to do, bar none, especially with these movies, because these movies don't have a wide array of cast that fit with other movies. So the cast I used is the cast of the Addams Family. My Count Orlok is Raul Julia. My Nosferatu is a Carl Strucken who played Lurch in the Addams Family movie. He's worked with Mike Flanagan quite a few times. My Thomas Hutter is Christopher Lloyd, and my Ellen Hutter is Angelica Houston. So for my plot, Thomas Hutter is a high-end real estate agent on the East Coast when his bosses tell him he has to go to Transylvania because millionaire Count Orlok wants to sell his family castle and move to America. Thomas decides to take his wife with him as a second honeymoon. Thomas looks into it, and the castle currently operates as a haunted experience bed and breakfast. They are warned by locals to stay away from the castle, and there's a large figure that haunts it. Thomas tells his wife Ellen the stories from the locals must be part of the experience. They arrive at the castle and are greeted by the suave and debonair Count Orlok, played by Raul Julia. Orlok comments on how beautiful Ellen's neck is. He takes them around the creepy and eerie castle. The first night, Thomas leaves his bed to go to the bathroom, and he sees the tall and massive figure. The next day, he asks Orlok about it, but Orlok brushes him off. Later that evening, Thomas wanders into the library and sees a book on vampires and reads a passage that if sunlight touches a vampire in their vampiric form, they will die. There are many scary things in the castle, including 2 young children played by Christina Ricci and Jimmy Workman, who played Wednesday and Pugsley in the Addams Family movie. Oh, and one thing I forgot to add, this is me and Johnny talked about this. We could either use like their original when the movie came out or their present day form. I used like the 1991 versions of these actors. They see Wednesday and the actors who played Wednesday and Pugsley Addams, who they assume are the children of other families staying there until they learn that they are the only couple there. One evening at dinner, Count Orlok excuses himself, saying he isn't feeling well. Thomas Hutter goes to check on him and sees him transform into the large, monstrous figure Nosferatu, who has long, pointy ears, a gaunt face, and sharp, pointy teeth. Basically, the classic Nosferatu look, except it's Carl Strucken that plays him, so he's like 7 foot tall. Nosferatu chases after Thomas. Thomas and them have a fight with him. Nosferatu bites into her neck, drawing blood. They run out and spend the night sitting at the bar down the road where Ellen dies. The next morning, Thomas sees Count Orlok loading coffins filled with Transylvania dirt onto a ship. Orlok climbs into one of the coffins, and the ship starts to go from the dock. Thomas runs and jumps onto the ship and starts opening the coffins one by one. Eventually, he finds the one with Orlok, who turns into Nosferatu, but as he grabs onto Thomas, his flesh starts to burn away, and that's my pitch.
Okay. All right. So my first question is for Johnny. Is there much like references to the original in yours? Like, are there like homages in there?
There's some homages and scenes and like Ben Stiller like as Nosferatu putting his cape up and stuff like that and being this hideous vampire. But for the most part, the homage is Ben Stiller looks like the Nosferatu super ugly vampire, and the rest of them, like Vince Vaughn and stuff, look like the Twilight sexy vampires, and they're like the cool ones, and they don't like Ben Stiller Nosferatu because he's like this old hideous beast.
Okay, gotcha. And Joe, who did you say your director was?
Mike Flanagan.
13-year-old Mike Flanagan.
We also talked that the director didn't have to direct the original.
We did not talk about that. We never said that.
Pretty sure we did, because at one point I was debating using the Nightmare on Elm Street cast for this. Robert Englund as Nosferatu, and then Johnny Depp is the main guy. And I was debating, we have to use like what director? And you said it doesn't have to be the director of the original. That if we use the cast from that. I
thought, now this won't affect it because I'll still fight you on it, but if we want to talk about cop-outs to rule, if you were using the cast from the 1991 era, you needed to use a director from that same era. If you used a director from the current era, you needed to use the cast as they are now. That is how I pictured the rule, but I mean, whatever. You pitched it, I'll let you have it, but that's how I picked it pictured it, and I think while that is a cop-out, if we want to go through the cop-out thing, that's a cop-out to the rule. I will give it to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not gonna hold it against. I'm okay with it. It's one of those ones where there's not a clear
we thought
definition of it before.
I thought it was pretty clear, but it was not clear apparently.
Gotcha. Okay, Tristan, your thoughts?
They're both very different takes on it. I think that's very interesting. I like the tone of Johnny's. I think it sounds like more of a watchable Frat Pack movie than I was expecting when he matched the rule with the movie. And I think this sounds like something that might actually be kind of fun to see them do, that sort of in genre parody kind of movie. So I think that seems pretty fun. But I do think using the cast of the Addams Family, crossing it over with Nosferatu, is also a really interesting take on the rule. So I think both of them, I mean, they're not their best pitches of the night, but I think they both use the rule decently for the movie they got, and I think that I'm pretty split, but neither one of them kind of blew me away with theirs.
All right, convince us, guys.
Right.
Well,
My thing against
Joe's
Johnny,
played it a few times the last few movies. So my thing with it is this. We've seen the story of Dracula, which is the story of Nosferatu, told so many times. Literally, if you could argue the last good Dracula movie was the Gary Oldman one. There's been nothing made since then, and that was at this point, 23, 24 years ago. So I don't need to see any story close to that. And I would say the only good vampire movie made since then is What We Do in the Shadows. So what I figured to do with my vampire movie was go closer to What We Do in the Shadows than Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I think making a scary vampire movie is non-existent. No one's afraid of vampires. They're not scary anymore. It's all become a parody. So the best thing to do is make a parody. And we got What We Do in the Shadows, which was like a fake little low-budget found footage movie. I want to see a similar type of movie, but with a higher budget and what's not found footage. So I wanted to do that. Ben Stiller is great at movies where you have the lead character is kind of an outlandish character, where you have Zoolander and you have Tropic Thunder, where everyone doesn't really understand the situation. Ben Stiller is going to be the naive vampire who thinks he can be cool, even though he is the reason that all these people are vampires now and they're all angry at him. He wants to be included. So I think that is a movie that is right up Ben Stiller's alley as a director. It's right up Ben Stiller's alley as an actor, as Nosferatu. You put the funny makeup on him, and I think these roles fit with my Frat Pack really well. Vince Vaughn is like the cool lead vampire. He doesn't really need to do a ton, which Vince Vaughn, at this point, if you're putting him into a comedy, he kind of just needs to be the sarcastic straight man, which he can be as the vampire. I think my cast fits very, very well, and then you still get outrageous, like funny scenes with Will Ferrell as Frankenstein's monster being not able to speak and kind of just running around this party, and still being accepted.
All right. So against what he said, they keep making the plot similar to what I've pitched over and over, but then said they haven't made a plot similar to what I've done in like 30 years. So I feel
they've made a plot similar to yours every 2 years, but there hasn't been a good one.
Okay, but even so, you put Mike Flanagan, and then you said vampires aren't scary. That's why I intentionally cast Carl Strucken as my Nosferatu, a vampire.
Big tall guy that can't talk, very scary.
Yeah, but then you also put it in basically a haunted house, and then you said we've seen my movie a bunch of times. We also saw your movie a bunch of times, except it was animated, and they called it Hotel Transylvania because that's basically what your movie sounds like. It's a comedy movie with a bunch of comedic actors who were famous like 10 years ago, playing like Dracula and a werewolf and all of these other monstrous creatures in a house.
Which Hotel Transylvania is perfectly acceptable. If you look at the career of Adam Sandler, those are probably the only entertaining comedies he's made since like Happy Gilmore. So first of all, those movies are fine. Second of all, my movies don't nothing like that because mine's an R-rated comedy for adults. It's not a child's animated movie. But if you're going to use those against mine, I'm going to use those for mine. I think those movies are the most fun thing we've seen from vampires outside of What We Do in the Shadows in 30 years. Like, those are interesting because they're fun and they're the characters that we love and they're different takes on what we like. And I think even like, especially the first one, it's probably Adam Sandler's highest Rotten Tomatoes scores other than Uncut Gems in 20 years. Like, I think that movie was widely acceptable and made money and people liked those movies.
I mean, I saw the first one, it was fine, and then I saw the second one and it was very bad, and I just have not seen the third. I don't even know if it's out on anything to watch it besides like Blu-ray, and I'm not gonna pay $20.
Yeah, but again, those are family movies and they're comedies for children, but this movie is not that. You're still gonna have violent scenes and vampires sucking blood and blood squirting out of people's necks, but it's going to be in more comedic methods than in normal vampire movies. I don't think vampires are scary, and I think that's a waste of Mike Flanagan's talent doing something like that. I think Mike Flanagan is more interesting when he is doing something that's never been seen on screen before.
That's why
I think yours is just, what if we took like Bram Stoker's Dracula but modernized it and gave it to Mike Flanagan, but also used 1991 actors?
The last thing he released was The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was based on The Turning of the Screw.
Good.
The last adaptation of The Turning of the Screw was a movie that came out in like January, starring Brooklyn Prince and Finn Wolfhard. So just because it's an adaptation we've seen before doesn't mean Mike Flanagan's not going to do it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's not going to do it. It's just that it's not very interesting. Like, I would much rather, sure, he can do it, but like even with Haunting of Bly Manor, like that if you watch the acting in that show, it's literally just a soap opera, and the whole show is, what if we just make every character as unrealistic as possible? And I think they painted him to a corner on that. I don't completely blame him. I think he's a good director, but I just think, man, I would love to see him just, they'd say, Mike Flanagan, you can do whatever you want with your next movie, make something new and original. And he could.
So far, he's only really done adaptations, and I'm fine with that. If he just
but he's done adaptations that no one's seen. Like he did, the sequel to The Shining that has never been made before. And yes, it was a book and it's an adaptation, but it's never been made. We've seen your storyline so many times, over and over and over and over, and it's boring and it's played out and it's not good and it's a waste of a good director. So I think the only way you can make the story of Nosferatu interesting is if you do something comedic with it, just like in What We Do in the Shadows. The Nosferatu type vampire, that's the super old man that lives in the basement, makes you fucking crack up every single time you see it. It's so funny. So I want more of that aspect, and I want less of what you're selling me. It just doesn't sound scary. It sounds like something I wouldn't take seriously, and it sounds like a waste of a good director.
Yeah, and see, with yours, you keep saying how yours is a different new take, but then it's similar to Hotel Transylvania, and then it's similar to What We Do in the Shadows. So maybe like the plot line's similar, or the plot line's different, but then it's like,
you want me to list all the movies that yours is similar to?
All right, guys, I think we're getting to a point where I've already got my decision, actually. So Joe, I do want to real quick though, just, you had kind of started to talk about it, and I just want to ask about it a little bit further. You mentioned that you were considering for this role the Nightmare on Elm Street cast. What was kind of your reasoning by not going with
This
that?
cast sucks.
because there's Robert Englund and Johnny Depp, and that's about it. And I was just like, if there was like anyone else in that cast that like was relatively good, I would have went with that. But that, like, there's Robert Englund and Johnny Depp, and that's it. And so I was like,
All right, Tristan.
I mean, I think Mike Flanagan could do a good Nosferatu movie. I like that director pick. I'm not quite sure I see this being a movie he directs, I guess. I think that he tries to go for more like thematic type things. You know, Haunting of Hill House was so popular and well received, not because it was so horrifying and scary, but because it was about like family grief and generational trauma between parents and children, and people discussed that more than they said, oh, did you see the scary part or whatever. And I don't see much depth to Nosferatu in terms of like thematic depth, and I don't think Mike Flanagan fans would be necessarily down for that. So I'm leaning towards Johnny's. I do think that's a good use of the rule. I think the Frat Pack has made some bad movies and made some good movies, and I think putting them in this kind of a movie would be an interesting use of that cast, and I think it could actually make them like have a lot of fun in these kind of tropey horror movie roles. So I'm leaning towards that. I think that's a little bit better of a rule use, and I think it ultimately sounds like a more of an interesting movie.
All right. Yeah, I think both pitches had their merits. I was originally thinking that I didn't love when it came to the rule usage for Joe. I didn't love going Addams Family over Nightmare on Elm Street, mostly because of Johnny Depp. I just think that he could have been good in that, and then obviously Robert Englund. But overall, I think Johnny's movie, to me, I'm a big fan of What We Do in the Shadows, both the movie and the TV show. I think that the Frat Pack could fit in well with that. Not making it the same movie or anything like that, but just kind of making it a parody of Nosferatu. Obviously, so the cast on that I really enjoy. And Ben Stiller as the director, I really enjoy too. I know you guys battled it out on the director choice of Mike Flanagan a bit. I didn't really have an issue with it, but overall, I just enjoyed Johnny's pitch a little bit more. So we have Johnny winning. It is now 4-2. So the Addams Family will be to see if Johnny gets the advantage in the next battle as well.
Put the bunny back in the box.
So we are on our final movie. Joe, who's going to go first on the Addams Family?
I'll go first. Wait, did I go first last time or?
I think
I think you went first. I'll go first. It's fine.
Yeah, Alex, what do we got? Tell us about the Addams Family.
Let me holler at you.
Have you used the rule twice yet?
Nope. This
Here it is.
Cool.
So Tristan probably knows what rule I'm going to use, but no one has any idea what rule you're using.
Yeah, I'm not tracking it, so I'm.
Yeah, don't say what my rule is because
I won't.
Okay.
I did.
So the Addams Family is directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. Has a 64% on Rotten Tomatoes and was made in 1991. The bio that I have for it is: con artists plan to fleece an eccentric family using an accomplice who claims to be their long lost uncle.
All right. So my director is going to be Michael Schur. He is the co-creator of The Good Place, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Parks and Rec. He hasn't directed, I don't think, any movies, but he's very good with like big over-the-top characters. And I think for the Addams Family, that's what's more important, is getting the characters right and making them funny and entertaining. And if you leave a version of if you walk out of the theater of the Addams Family and we're like, oh, those shots were like amazing and interesting and the storytelling was incredible, like I feel like they made the movie wrong. Like the characters, especially for the Addams Family, are what's the most important. So for my Gomez Addams, it's Michael Pena. My Morticia Addams is Scarlett Johansson. My Wednesday Addams is Brooklyn Prince from the Florida Project. My Pugsley Addams is Roman Griffin Davis from Jojo Rabbit. My Uncle Fester is Paul Walter Hauser from Richard Jewell, I, Tanya, and he's in season 2 of Cobra Kai. My Lurch, I'm going to butcher this name, is Boban Marjanovic, currently plays for the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh, man, baby!
Currently plays for the Dallas Mavericks, and he was in John Wick 3. My grandmama is Cloris Leachman. She was in Young Frankenstein and Spanglish. And then as a cameo, as my grandpapa is John Astin, who played Gomez Addams in the TV series. And so the whole Addams Family clan is visiting for Wednesday's 10th birthday, including grandmama, grandpapa, cousinette, flora and fauna, etc. They all get her an array of weird and macabre gifts, including a stuffed rat, a revival machine, and a shrunken head. Everyone is eating at the dinner table during a big storm when the lights go out for a moment. When the lights come back on, Uncle Fester is choking with his hands around his throat. He passes out and dies from poison. Everyone is shocked. Wednesday is excited because she can use her revival machine. Lurch carries Fester upstairs to her machine. She and Pugsley strap him in and start it up. He is brought back to life, but he doesn't have any idea who would kill him. Gomez wants to get to the bottom of it, so he hires a team of private investigators played by John Krasinski and Nick Offerman to figure out who poisoned Uncle Fester, because the rule I am using is I am making this a whodunit. Krasinski and Offerman are the straight men confused by all of the weirdness that is the Addams Family. They don't understand why they are being hired to discover the killer of a man who seems to be alive and well. They interview all of the various family members and look at all of the clues. At the end, it is revealed it was Pugsley who poisoned Uncle Fester as a birthday present for Wednesday so she could use her revival machine. He didn't say anything for fear of getting in trouble, and that's my pitch for the Addams Family.
Okay. Johnny?
Interesting, Joe. We matched up on a couple of things there.
I figured we matched up on Lurch because there are very limited options.
Yeah, we might have. And our grandmama. All right. Okay, so my director, because I'm going a little different direction than Joe, is going to be Paul King. He made the Paddington movies, which I think are fantastic. And the tone, not exactly the tone I'm going for, but the audience I'm going for. I'm going for a PG rating, and it's going to be for families. But it's going to be darker than Paddington. So my Morticia is going to be played by Tilda Swinton, I think is a perfect Morticia. My Gomez is going to be played by Antonio Banderas. He, I think, is perfect for the smooth-talking, handsome Gomez. My Uncle Fester is going to be played by John Malkovich, who I think is a perfect role for Fester. My Granny is Cloris Leachman. Joe and I agree on that point. My Lurch is also Boban Marjanovic, who is in John Wick 3, and he is to me, and will always be in my heart, a Philadelphia 76ers player.
Detroit Piston.
and a Piston. So, he's played for basically both my home teams. My Wednesday, we'll get into why my people are a little older than Joe's cast. My Wednesday, I don't care about the world. I'm going to make everybody else miserable, and it's going to give me happiness. There's no one else more perfect than Aubrey Plaza for my Wednesday. My Pugsley is going to be played by Paul Walter Hauser. Joe also has in his movie, but he was in I, Tonya in Super Troopers 2 and Black Klansman. And then I will give you 3 other cast members that you will understand once I get into my pitch. My repeater rule, is that I am using Chuck Norris in my movie. My Captain Grimby, his name is going to be played by Chuck Norris. My Mr. Brock is going to be played by Chris Pine, and Mr. Brock's main henchman is going to be played by Jason Mantzoukas, who is famous for The League, and he was in John Wick 3 Parabellum, and he is just one of the funniest people on earth, and I think he fits this role well, what I'm pitching. So here's my pitch. It's going to be based a lot on the classic TV show, which I think is so good. And what I know more honestly than the movie, the classic TV show, is near and dear to my heart. So, based on the classic episode of the original show, The Great Treasure Hunt, the movie is set after the events of most Addams Family stories. Gomez and Morticia are retired. Their kids are grown up and working. Wednesday is an interior designer who specializes in macabre, and Pugsley is an attorney just like his father. Gomez and Morticia are bored at home, being retired, and they decide to sell the house. They find a buyer after a fun sequence of families being creeped out by the house. One family ends up buying it, so they are excited. They have someone who wants the Addams Family mansion. They invite the family over for a reunion and to help them box up things in the house. While searching through the attic, Wednesday and Pugsley find an old map. They bring it down to the rest of the family. Gomez recognizes it as a treasure map from his old pirate days with an old friend, Captain Grimby. Gomez says they are too old to go on an adventure, but Morticia is aching for some excitement, so she persuades Gomez by speaking to him in French, as she always does. They go to meet Grimby. Grimby, played by Chuck Norris, is old and retired, but tells the family they can charter a ship with his mate, Mr. Brock, played by Chris Pine. The family tells Mr. Brock they are in search for a treasure, and he agrees to help. Little do they know, he plans to betray them and steal the treasure. The adventure goes from location to location, with Mr. Brock failing to scare the family away so he can keep the map. Eventually, Gomez remembers where the treasure is and says they have to get home as soon as possible. They race to the home right before the house is about to be sold. Gomez tells the new family he has reconsidered selling the house, but the paperwork has already been signed by his lawyer. He offers his family more money than they spent on the house to rip up the paperwork. They accept, and the rest of the Addams family looks at Gomez like he's crazy. He tells them to follow him to the basement. Gomez reveals a secret cellar door and opens it up. The treasure was buried underneath the Addams house all along. The treasure is revealed to be rare family photos from the time Wednesday and Pugsley were kids. The credits roll with the pictures of the Addams family photos. Now, my movie is all about family and the things that the old Addams family is famous for. Gomez decides these photos are worth more than the money that I have, so I'm going to buy back the house from these people to make sure that we get the treasure. And the reason that I have Chuck Norris as Mr. Grimby, so he's not just a thrown-out character, is that Gomez is going to hype up Captain Grimley before the family meets him. So he is going to basically say like the Chuck Norris jokes, but it's going to be about Captain Grimby. So it's going to say, he's going to be hyping him up saying, I once saw Captain Grimby dribble a bowling ball. I once saw Captain Grimby speak Braille. I once saw Captain Grimby tie his own boots with his feet. So we're going to have some of that, and then the family's going to meet Captain Grimby, and it's going to be this 80-year-old man, and they're all going to be highly disappointed because they thought he was going to be this cool pirate. And then this old man, Chuck Norris, is going to be like, yeah, I can't help you, go, with my friend. So that's my pitch. That's my Addams Family movie. It's going to have a lot of throwbacks to the old school Addams Family show, and I think my cast is just perfect for the pitch that I sent forward. So that's
awesome. Great. Okay, so a couple of questions. Joe, you already kind of touched on this a little bit more, but I'd like to hear a little bit on the decision to use Michael Schur here as the director. I mean, I know he's done some great stuff with TV, but film-wise, what was kind of the reason behind choosing him over somebody else?
Basically, because I wanted someone who I felt confident in and could do crazy over-the-top characters and more like different type characters. And I wasn't really, with the Addams Family movie, I wasn't really concerned with like great visual shots and all of that. It's basically, I mean, obviously you need a capable director, and he has directed episodes of those shows, but I feel like it's a lot more of working with the actors and getting the characters right. And that's why I felt like Michael Schur was the better choice than somebody else. Because originally my original thought was Tim Burton, who I guess is now doing a Addams Family show, but Tim Burton hasn't done anything good in like 20 years. So I just feel like there's not a perfect choice out there. So I went with someone who I thought could still give me a good Addams Family.
Okay. And then this one is for both of you. I guess, especially Joe's is definitely different, which I know it comes with the rule, but definitely a little bit different than the movie. So in terms of trying to explain, like if we're making this a remake of the Addams Family, what made you guys both kind of want to veer away from what the original was so much?
Can I answer for, I think, the both of us? I think there's kind of an unwritten, unspoken rule that like the bigger the IP is and the more like known the property is outside of that movie, the more we're just kind of free to write whatever we want, as long as we have the characters and kind of the tone and themes of the original. Like if you're rebooting a movie and the movie only exists of itself, like if we were to like reboot Inglourious Bastards, you kind of have to do a lot of that same plot, because that's all Inglourious Bastards exists as, because it's just that movie. Where the Addams Family is like a comic,
almost like a
TV
universe
show,
or
multiple movies. Like you're kind of free to just do whatever you want, because it's
I agree. The Addams Family not only is famous for their movies in the 90s, which are fantastic, but also for their TV show and comics. And you have so many storylines to play with that I feel like you have an open universe. As long as you have the right characters, you can do kind of whatever plot you want.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So there's a live comment that I think has a good point, asking a question about Johnny's. So I'd like to go into that. Spinner 58
I was going to bring that up.
Gomez could get the photos before they left and didn't have to buy back the house. So what's the reason for doing that?
So Gomez thinks it's an old treasure map leading to treasure, but throughout the film, just like the old episode, if you've ever watched the original show, which I highly recommend, there is an episode called The Great Treasure Hunt. And in that episode, they find half a treasure map and they search the house to find the other half. They go on this big adventure, and that is where Captain Grinsby comes up and Mr. Brock. And in the end of the episode, Gomez remembers, oh, wait a second. The treasure is actually buried beneath the house. I completely forgot. And in the show, it was just gold chocolate coins. And that is the big treasure. So my movie is a play on that, but it's basically because they are retired and because they are older, he completely forgot that these photos were buried underneath the house. But throughout the movie, something triggers him and he's like, oh, we got to get back to the house as soon as possible. And everyone's confused by it. And then it's revealed, hey, the treasure's underneath the house, because no one knows that he doesn't remember because they're older and retired. I think that works better for the storyline than like in the old show when he was just regular Gomez and this younger man and he doesn't remember, I think, making him retired. And this has been years and years and years since he buried these things. Throughout the movie, he has to go on this venture to remember that they are buried underneath the house. So that is why.
But I think the question more, and I was thinking the same thing, is like, why can't he just be like, hey, I left some pictures in the basement, and then he goes and picks up the pictures, and then they leave, and he doesn't necessarily have to buy back the house?
Because it's not very Addams Family, and that is why he comes back and says, I will give you whatever money that it takes to keep this house, because not only remembering that the things are buried underneath the house, knowing that that is the treasure, that this is the place that we grew up. This is where my family grew up. Addams Family is very much about family. And I wanted that theme of, you know what, no matter what we thought, we were kind of bored and we wanted an adventure. So we wanted to sell the house. We went on our adventure. We went on this boat. We did our adventure. So now it's made me realize we cannot sell the house at what cost because of all of the memories that it has.
Okay. Tristan, your thoughts?
I like Joe's director a lot. I think Michael Schur has done some, especially with The Good Place just ending. I think that was a really interesting direction for his career. It had these sort of like, it was very comedic still, but it lightly examined these like existential themes. And I think that was something interesting. And I wanted to see how much of that would you want to bring into this? Like, would you have any sort of like, I don't know, larger theme that he's trying to lightly explore through these characters, even if it's just comedically?
I mean, yeah, obviously I'm with Johnny of like the whole family thing of like working together, and it's the whole family, and then you think there's betrayal within the family, but then it turns out it's really not so much, because I know like Johnny's more attached to and closer to like the TV series, which I've seen, and I was going more towards the movies, which I don't think going either way is wrong, and so mine is like slightly darker. And so I felt like there was kind of searching more betrayal within the family, and then it turns out it was more just Pugsley trying to be nice to his sister and give her a birthday present, even though the birthday present is technically killing the uncle, but he knew it wasn't permanent. It was more just to kill her so Wednesday could try out her new machine.
Okay. Anything else, Tristan?
That was my big question for his. I think I have asked all my questions. I'm leaning one way, but I want to hear them argued out before I say anything.
I am legitimately 50-50 on this one. I think that there's things I like about both, and there's not really one that I'm leaning towards, especially since you both managed to get Boban in this film. So,
yeah, right.
Well, who else would you even cast? Like, no one else even like fits.
The Great Khali.
No, yeah, I was thinking that, but I think Boban actually has more charisma, which I think is funny.
Yeah.
The one-liners for Lurch. I don't think the Great Khali can nail those. So when Joe texted me originally, he was like, I want to see who you pitch as Lurch, because I think there's only like one or two people that you could. And in my mind, immediately, I was like, well, it's fucking Boban, of course. And I'm glad that both of us cast him, because that was immediately who I went to.
So, so let's hear you guys go at it, because I think you both went in the different direction, but I think neither, like Joe said, neither of them were wrong.
Can I got a quote? What was like the tone, or like who's your target audience? I remember you said, but I don't remember the. So
my movie is going to be like a PG movie, because it's still going to have a little dark themes and like the Addams Family, like macabre, and dealing with some things like, Chris Pine as the like kind of maniacal villain. I think he did very well in Horrible Bosses 2. He's going to play a similar character, and he's going to be trying to betray them with Jason Mantzoukas, but every time he tries to scare them or do anything like that, the family is more entertained by it because they're used to these things. So he kind of breaks in the end. I'm going for like the audience of Paddington and Paddington 2, families and children can see it, adults can see it. You can watch it by yourself when you're 26 years old and love it to death, because that's what I did with Paddington. I think those movies are fantastic, and they have great family messages. They have outstanding direction, and I think that's a strong director for taking over a good franchise and a well-known property.
All right, so my problem with that is I feel like if you were going more like the PG-13 route, like Aubrey Plaza and Paul Walter Hauser are like good fits for those roles because they're like older and it would fit more of an older audience. But I feel like if your target audience is like a PG audience, younger kids and stuff, then the movie should have kids in it. And I feel like it would be a better route to have Wednesday. And like, obviously it wouldn't fit your plot, but like, I feel like the better route would be to have Wednesday and Pugsley be younger, to have like someone kids could look at and connect with and relate to, instead of having like a family that's all where like the youngest person is like 35.
So basically what I'm going for in this is we grew up with the Addams Family, and older people grew up with the Addams Family show. So we growing up with the 90s version of the Addams Family are, a lot of people are adults now, they have kids. I think it would be good for them to have a movie that's the Addams Family that is a grown version of the family that still has the family values, that's still kid friendly, but the age of the characters is more representative of who we are now than what kids are. But kids can easily still enjoy this movie because when you were a kid, you still watched movies that didn't have kids in it and enjoyed it. There are plenty of them, like Space Jam. How many kids are actually in that movie? You have the little kid for like a second, and we all grew up loving that because Michael Jordan.
It still had cartoon characters running around.
It had cartoon characters, but that's kind of what this is. I mean, they're still cartoonish characters. Uncle Fester is still going to be the goofy character that he is. I didn't cast obviously like the Thing and
any guy with a hand can play that role. Same with
like anyone with a hand. Like, you're still going to have funny moments with those characters, but they're still in it, and they're going to give kids laugh. But I think Paddington is kind of for adults, but with childlike. Like a kid could watch it, but if you watch those movies, it has themes and it has characters that are meant for people our age to kind of watch and feel heartfelt about. That's what I feel like my director Paul King could do very, very well with my movie. And I think Aubrey Plaza is just such a perfect personality for Wednesday. There is no other character, no other actress in the world that could play Wednesday better than her. And
Brooklyn Prince.
No, because Brooklyn Prince is a good actress and she's a child, but like there's nothing in any of the movies that she's been in that can say, oh, she can be the dark character of Wednesday. No, she's like a fun-loving kid. Wednesday is not a fun-loving
dark in
kid.
The Turn, which I saw the trailer for. The Turning.
It's a trailer for, but like he's amazing in whatchamacallit with
Florida Project.
Yeah, the Florida Project, but like there's not one thing I see in the Florida Project that I'm like, yeah, that's Wednesday Addams. But if you follow Aubrey Plaza's career, she's done things for kids. She's done things for adults. She's done things in every single area. And she is the persona of Wednesday. She is so perfect for that role. And I think Paul Walter Hauser is a great Pugsley. And he's more of a goofy character that you could easily just tone down and make a kid's character in Super Troopers 2. You don't need that to be an R-rated character. You can basically just pull his character from the movie and he can be Pugsley. So I think those two fit those roles so well. I don't think there's really any kids that really scream, Wednesday and Pugsley nowadays. So that's why I wanted to age them up.
All right. Anything else before we get to decision time?
No, yeah, I've said all my things against his. So,
I mean, I think with mine, I just think the Addams Family needs. The second movie was literally called Family Values. I think you need that overtone of the family theme. I think I have a better director to really pull that, and I think I have a stronger cast to do that. And I think that my storyline not only pulls from the old episode, so it's not just something completely made up. I think it's something that everyone can have fun with. Kids like pirate. Like you don't have to be a kid to, you don't have to watch a kid be a pirate to enjoy it. Kids liked Hook, and Robin Williams is an adult in that. So my movie has the Addams Family and pirates and funny characters and a good cast. And my cinematographer is going to be Darius Wolski, who did not Edward Scissorhands. The Demon Butcher of Fleet Street, whatever his name is, and a lot of
Sweeney Todd.
So he's going to have that kind of gothic cinematography, so you can kind of pull that into Paul King's movie.
Okay, good. Well, before I go to Tristan, I just want to say I think you both did a really good job of kind of capturing the quirks of the Addams Family, like in your stories. And that's kind of what made this hard for me, was if one of you guys wouldn't have really done that, I think that it would have made it a little easier. And Johnny, I really loved the tie-in with Chuck Norris and the Captain Grimby jokes. I think that's a fun little kind of Easter egg for people, and then for everyone to be disappointed with him being 80 years old and like, what? I enjoyed that. But Tristan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm feeling the same. These are both really good pitches. I think you guys both you guys both went into detail to try and make sure you captured like the characters that are so iconic, because no one remembers like specific storylines of the Addams Family as much as we remember like the characters and some of their interactions and some of their personality quirks. So I think you guys both captured them really well, and I think you guys both went in different directions that I would have. I mean, I think a Whodunnit Addams Family is a good idea. I think having them in that mansion and trying to interact with these Whodunnit characters is interesting. So I'm very split 50-50. You guys did a great job arguing it, so I would have a hard time making this call if I was the judge.
We put a lot into the Addams Family. I don't know why these were both our most passionate pitches, but we are both big fans of the Addams Family.
Yeah.
So thank you for putting this all on me, Tristan. I appreciate that.
That's what I'm here for.
So like I said, I just gave you my thoughts. I'm a little unsure on Michael Schur as the director. Not that I have any doubts in his ability to
I've
write.
won with him as a director before when he made my Muppets, whatever I did. Oh, Muppets Little.
Because he's a better fit for that. But honestly, I should have attacked him more. But like, he's not a good fit for this.
But to be honest, I've never seen any of either of the Paddington movies, so Paul King didn't really speak to me too much there.
I do think the Paddington tone would fit pretty well with the movie that he pitched. So I think that works for the director and the idea that he went for. So I would definitely give him a point for that if I was judging on the director.
If you haven't seen Paddington, all you kind of have to do is look at like reviews of it, and it fits like the family tone that I'm going for.
Yeah. And then just a quick note: Michael Pena is one of my favorites. So anything he's being put into, I'm happy with.
Oh, I forgot to hit on Scarlett Johansson. Fuck Scarlett Johansson. That's a terrible fucking cast. Oh, damn it. I forgot to hit on I hate her.
It's too late. There's no talking about that. I think that overall though, I liked both pitches, like I said, and I really loved the tie-in of the Chuck Norris thing. I liked the kind of at the end buying the house back instead of, I know people saw a little bit of a plot hole in that rather than it being helpful, but I think once again it's a little bit of a quirkiness to them. But overall, you have a whodunit where they kill somebody just so that they could use a bring somebody back to life machine. So I ended up giving this to Joe. It was very close. I liked both sides. But yeah, so overall we come to a 4-3 game.
Oh yeah, it's all I cared about. Getting rid of that repeater rule.
Close matchup, but we do have a little bit of feedback from Spinner 58 on on Johnny, and it's Johnny's arguments.
I feel like you explained your plot hole well, because I thought that's where you're going with it, but you never said that. You just were like, "Oh, they got the pictures," but when you said it's more about like the memories, and they don't want to give up the memories, and they don't. They wasn't really like the pictures were more a metaphor. I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense."
Yeah, it's family themed. They want to keep their house. That's what the old show went for. So that's what I was going for. And
I get what you're saying.
For anyone who doesn't know, is Joe's mom, so she's a little biased.
Well, I would like to say that that I think that was probably of the episodes I've been on, that was probably my favorite in terms of like two like pitches that I've heard to go against. I think you guys both took a different angle, but I think both of them could win against any other pitch that somebody else would have came up against. So I think that you guys, I know.
Joe and I were facing someone else on this episode, and we did our same pitches. We would have annihilated them. This was a very difficult episode because Joe and I think other than Joe's nightmare pitch, I think that
was by far my least favorite.
Everything else, I think, could have gone either way because I liked Joe's pitches a lot. So I had to kind of narrow down my arguments against them. But yeah, if we were facing anyone else on this episode, we would have won. Joe would have won this if he was facing anybody else, I think.
I think that there wasn't a whole lot of ones where I like after the pitches I was like, oh, I already know where I'm going. I think that overall it was a pretty pretty good matchup.
But
So
also, damn, I wish Tristan was our judge because I would have fucking annihilated Joe like 7-0. Like he sided with me all the time. I wish Tristan was our judge. Shaggy over there really felt for my pitches, which I appreciate.
You know, it's easy when you're not the actual judge. You just get to be like, oh yeah, I mean that one sounded pretty good. You know,
You don't have to worry about the score.
You just get to
don't
write
have
it
to
out and think if you'd like it or
hard
not.
to come into your mind when you're the judge, and I've had that happen. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of 51-49, but it would make it more interesting if I chose the 49. I've done that before, so I'm guilty of that. But at the same time, everyone kind of is. It does factor into your decision.
Burt Macklin 2020, baby.
Probably better decision than either of our other ones. So
yeah, no kidding. But if you get my name right next time, Tristan, not Zach.
Zach.
My dyslexia hitting me.
We're now Zach.
But so let's go around first of all and kind of get a feel for what everyone's favorite pitch was. Tristan, what was your favorite pitch for the night?
My favorite pitch was Johnny's Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it made a really good use of the rule, and I think it was a really interesting way to incorporate it into the franchise, like retroactively, and make it this movie that came out first. I really liked his pitch there, and I think it was definitely the most interesting use of that kind of the rule that I've seen. Like make it a 19. I think that was the best one I've heard.
Gotcha. How about you, Johnny?
My favorite pitch of my own was either my Addams Family or my Nightmare pitch. I just felt like I really liked my idea when I thought of that for Nightmare, because usually when we're like, oh, make a 1970s movie, it's just like an earlier version of what actually came out. But when I thought of the idea of what I did, I thought that was very creative, and I liked that because I thought it spun the rule well. Joe's pitches, it was really tough to fight against his Addams Family. Even though I think I should have hit more on his cast and his director, and I spent more of the time defending my plot, I think I could have maybe won that point and got a repeater rule again. But I think Joe's pitch for the Addams Family is very good, and I expected that going in. I would love to see a whodunit, and all of his reasons made sense for the characters. So I enjoyed that one.
How about you, Joe?
Yeah, my favorite pitch of Johnny's, even though I think I beat him, was the Purge.
I'm still pissed.
I thought I was dead in the water with his Purge. The only thing I didn't like about his movie was Mahershala Ali's character, like not caring about his going out and saving his daughter, just deciding to stay home until later on in the movie. To me, if I was watching that, I wouldn't buy that of his daughter out during the Purge. Him being like an ex-cop, so he's experienced, and it's not like he's. If it was like I can't think of any, but like a Tom Hanks type, and he wanted to stay home and be like, okay, I can buy that because he's just like an average regular guy who feels like he would get killed. But like an ex-cop, I would be like, there's no way he's just leaving his daughter out there. That was my only thing against his, and I forgot to bring it up. And as you went to give your ruling, I'm like, oh shit, I had one extra thing I could attack his on and forgot about, but I wanted.
And that we could have went further on too, like that pitch. I'm bummed I lost that one because that one I was really passionate about. I thought mine was a lot better than Joe's on that, but Alex went the other direction. But I felt like my way of that I didn't explain fully, but it was more of Mahershala Ali's character development was he wanted to keep his wife safe, so he didn't want to go out into the danger. But then in the end, he realized his wife convinces him, I don't care if you want to keep me safe. I'm going to do everything I can to keep the daughter safe. So then his role in it is, okay, I need to keep my whole family safe. So it was more of that rather than I don't care about going out. Let's stay home. It was kind of like, I'm married to you. I, did my whole life to kind of protect you, and I'm not going to let you go out there. I don't know. There are some points I wish I'm going to listen back and see what I could have maybe hit on, but I'm bummed I lost the pitch point because I thought that pitch was really good.
Yeah, and like I said, I think my issue with it was just that if the statement that it's going on is the police brutality, which I understand, I think that it's kind of in the world today, the issue is that it's happening every day already. So for the police, I just feel like I know it's probably a little bit more of a trope at this point of the government set up this system so that minorities would kill each other. I know that probably is a little bit played out in terms of plot lines, but I just felt from a police brutality standpoint, if you're making the statement, it should be that it's happening on every day, not on the Purge day when everything's legal anyways.
Yeah, and for that, I could have hit on see what's happening nowadays. Imagine what was happening if this was legal. You know what I mean? It would be like amplified to the 100th degree. So like that's something that I kind of meant with my pitch, and I didn't really get into. So I feel like that one could have gone. That was the one. That and the Addams Family, I feel like, are the two that could have gone either way. I feel like every other decision I could have agreed with. Although I hate losing. So.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It's interesting when Johnny has to face other people, because so far he's only ever fought me or Bobby. So
I fought other people, right?
no,
Did I fight Tristan? I don't remember.
No.
Not yet, but I'm coming.
Johnny can bully. Johnny's a little bit of a he'll come at you. So you better, if you're gonna face him, you better be ready to defend your pitch.
I'd be ready. I think I could get hyped. You know.
I want to face Tristan
Bring the energy
so bad because every time I listen to an episode with Tristan on it, I'm like, I like his pitch a lot. So I would like to face Tristan whenever we can schedule it. I will face Tristan because
it might not be until the tournament. So
might not be, but I like all of Tristan's pitches, and I usually, if I was the judge, I'd agree with him. I think the one win he has is when I was a judge. I would like to face Tristan for sure, because I think we could have a very good fight, and it would be hard for me to fight against what he said.
Loser leaves town. I like it.
Loser leaves town match.
Yep. There we go.
Let's go.
So let's wrap it up real quick. Tristan, anything you've been watching, suggest people should look into or anything like that?
Well, I know we just had Johnny making fun of Hunting a Blind Manor and saying it was terrible, but I binged through most of that, and I really liked it a lot. It's not as scary as the first season, but I think it's really interesting, and I got very emotionally attached. I was crying myself to sleep that night after I watched that thing, so check that out on Netflix, especially Halloween coming up a couple of days. Could be a fun binge for a socially distant Halloween day.
All right, how about you, Johnny?
I recently watched the movie Forgotten on Netflix. It's a Korean film. If you're into international films, it's one of the craziest movies I've ever seen. If you like plot twists, watch this movie. It's just full of them. It's very fun. That would be my recommendation. I have never seen Haunting of Bly Manor. I've heard it's fine, but like, I just shit on it because Joe defended his movie with it. So that's really all I did. So don't let my argument against that show hinder your opinion of it. Watch it and see if it's good.
All right, Joe.
yeah, what we learned: Johnny will lie to win. Johnny repeatedly lies to win. Like
Johnny should run for office.
I've never seen Paddington in my life, by the way. I've never seen him.
Yeah, because we were talking, and he asked me if Lurch speaks, and then in his pitch, he's talking about how he's like the biggest fan of the Addams Family TV
Never
series. I'm
seen
like, wait a minute, when we texted, you didn't even know if Lurch spoke.
Yeah, I've never seen the original show in my life, and I haven't watched probably either movie. So, you know, it just kind of it just depends on the research you do.
Yeah,
I
Johnny
researched that one a lot.
Yeah, so I haven't really been watching anything. I've mainly been working on these fucking pitches for the last week and 2 weeks. So
how did it go for you?
Not fucking well there, Tristan. Not fucking well.
I've been rewatching Daredevil just because season 2 with the Punisher is like my favorite season of pretty much any show. So that's what I'm on. If you haven't seen it, I don't know what's wrong with you. So definitely watch Daredevil. But other than that, everybody, thank you for listening, watching. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And we'll see you next week.
Peace out.
See ya.